Chapter 941. Qin Weibai's evaluation was completely sincere. The red bird, the blue turtle, and the purple ancient tree did not look very big, but in the limited space, the dense branches almost crowded every available corner. If the twisted trunk stood upright, it would be at least more than 20 meters. The thick trunk kept twisting on the left and right sides, looking like a giant dragon with a curved body. The ancient tree was so eye-catching, but the red bird and the blue turtle were still eye-catching. One big and two small, one plant and two animals, got along very well in the huge glass cover, each with its own light. Qin Weibai stared at the scene deeply. The red bird stood lazily on the treetop. It was very small, even slightly smaller than a sparrow, but its whole body was fiery red, even blood red. Two very thin but very long feathers stretched out from under its wings, extending more than a meter long, like two red lines supporting its small body. Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes, walked to the glass window, and knocked slightly. Chirp! Another fierce and loud bird chirp sounded. On the treetop, the red bird suddenly opened its wings. In an instant, there seemed to be two groups of flames burning on the purple ancient tree. Qin Weibai took a step back and looked at the scene. Her eyes were shining. The two feathers on the wings of the red bird were more than a meter long, which were its folded wings. Now, as it flapped its wings, the two wings, which were more than a meter long, were fully opened. All of Qin Weibai's eyes were attracted by the two dazzling red wings. The wings flapped slowly. In this case, in the center of the two wings, the body of the red bird, which was smaller than a sparrow, was like an ordinary organ, as if the two wings were its main body. So beautiful, she whispered to herself, with sincere appreciation in her tone. Where's its information? Qin Weibai asked softly. Yu Donglai found a button at the bottom of the glass cover in silence and pressed it. The glass cover began to glow faintly, revealing line after line of text. Blue-crowned sparrow poison. Fire cloud bird deadly poison 6 experiments. Magma bird liquid poison 75 experiments. Poison bloodwings, poison fusion mutation 315 experiments. Cardinal sparrow, extremely hot poison 1372 experiments. Vermilion bird unknown. Qin Weibai's gaze shifted slightly to the right. Similarly, a piece of text appeared on the glass cover on the right. Deep-sea frigid turtle deadly poison. Dark lurker, latent poison 46 experiments. Enfrost turtle poison assimilation 285 experiments. Black shell extremely cold poison 600 experiments. Black tortoise unknown immature. His gaze was focused on the center as the gentle and subtle words continued to shine. Ebony, basic container. Poison fusion body, mutated, genetically modified. Poison mutation body, multiple mutations, number of experiments unknown. Poison immune body, tree of life, unknown. Qin Weibai carefully read every word and did not speak for a long time. What he saw in front of him could be said to be one of the most core secrets of the Li family. The overall plan began more than 260 years ago, and was called the Tree of Life Project. The Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had been tied together for a very long time. Therefore, in terms of horizontal comparison, the Tree of Life Project was equivalent to the Wang family of Beihai's Immortality Potion Improvement Plan. It was one of the most important plans of the Li family. From a biological point of view, this is indeed a miracle. Qin Weibai whispered. She had seen this plan in her notes, but it was the first time that she had really come into contact with these three creatures. Both cardinal and black shell are the work of predecessors. Yu Donglai's tone was a little emotional. He did not deny Qin Weibai's statement. However, the existence of Hongke and Xianjia was indeed a miracle in life. In the beginning, the Li family had gathered a large number of biological experts. The initial purpose was undoubtedly to enhance their strength. From the beginning, the Li family attached great importance to all kinds of poisons. The reason was that a very important heir of the third generation of the Li family had died from a strange poison in the Hung state. Therefore, this plan was called the Poison King Plan at the beginning. The original purpose of the Li family was to develop a poison that could kill any creature. After countless experiments in the early stage, the original team identified two creatures as the carriers of the Poison King Plan. The blue-crowned sparrow had ordinary poisons but was extremely sensitive to poisons. The deep-sea cold turtle had highly toxic and strong vitality, and had a certain degree of resistance to all kinds of poisons. That was the first part of the plan. Then, over a long period of time, after countless experiments, it successfully evolved again and again. Yes, was evolution. In life, it was similar to a miracle of evolution. The original carrier was combined with various theoretical species to give birth to offspring. At the same time, a large number of poisons were used to improve the genes of hybrids. Then, the theoretical different species were combined with the genetically improved hybrids to give birth to new offspring. Experiments, failures, and failures kept repeating the process. Different theories were overturned again and again. The blue-crowned sparrow kept dying, one after another, year after year. In the 10th year of the Poison King plan, the blue-crowned sparrow completed its perfect evolution for the first time and became a highly toxic fire cloud bird. A brand new species evolved from the blue-crowned sparrow. 5 years later, the research of the deep-sea cold turtle made a major breakthrough. The deep-sea cold turtle evolved into a dark lurker. The Poison King plan took a crucial first step. More than 200 years of research, generations of teams made countless efforts, and finally, the blue-crowned sparrow and the deep-sea cold turtle evolved to a very high level. Cardinal. Black armor. Compared with the original blue-crowned sparrow and the deep-sea cold turtle, the cardinal and black armor had nothing in common with the former two. They were completely two new species with highly toxic bodies. This was the extremely secretive poison of the leaf family's hottest poison, and the coldest poison. The hottest poison was as violent as fire, and its toxicity was extremely fierce. In theory, a drop of cardinal's blood could completely ignite all the vitality of an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm in an instant, burning the opponent into nothingness in the fastest time, even leaving no ashes. The coldest poison was good at hiding. Once poisoned, there was basically no possibility of getting rid of it. It was destined to accompany the poisoned person for a lifetime. When two kinds of extremely opposite poisons were combined, the intense and difficult to remove poison was enough to kill an expert at the peak of the invincible realm. This kind of poison could be turned into a liquid or a gaseous poison, which was almost impossible to guard against. The only drawback was that the fusion process of the two poisons was extremely difficult, and some special materials were needed. At present, Yu Donglai only had one real finished poison. Do you want that poison? Yu Donglai said slowly. This needs Tianlan's approval. No, that poison can be put aside for the time being. It's not the time to use it yet. Qin Weibai shook her head. The coldest and hottest poison could kill an expert at the peak of the invincible realm, but this did not mean that it had an upper limit. It was just that in the past many years, the peak of the dark world was the expert at the peak of the invincible realm. In her notes, Qin Weibai was very clear that this poison could cause a fatal threat to even an expert beyond the peak of the invincible realm. The deterrent effect of this poison in Emperor Dong's palace was even far greater than that of a fully charged murderous weapon. I'm here to see this tree. Qin Weibai asked. Is it called the poison-immune body now? Yes, my poison-immune body. Yu Donglai's spirit was refreshed. His face was glowing, and he deliberately emphasized his tone. Red Sparrow and Black Armor were completed about 60 years ago. It had been nearly 50 years since Yu Donglai joined the Li family, and it had been more than 40 years since he began to contact Red Sparrow and Black Armor. Red Sparrow and Black Armor had been evolving for many years, and they were no longer the original ones. Although the newly born Red Sparrow and Black Armor were stronger than before, they were still far from the next perfect evolution that was expected. Yu Donglai naturally contributed to this, but his greatest contribution was still on the tree in front of him. About 100 years ago, not long after the blue-crowned sparrow and the frigid turtle completed their third evolution, the team at that time accidentally discovered that the toxins of the magma bird and the frigid turtle could be fused in a certain substance, forming a state that was similar to solidification. In such a state, the combined toxins were almost a whole, and foreign toxins could not affect this whole at all. At that time, this further increased the difficulty of evolution. But at the same time, someone also proposed an idea to study a substance that could fuse the two toxins, and used this substance to fuse the two toxins and distribute them to the important personnel of the Li family. In this way, the people who took this solidified toxin would theoretically be immune to all poisons. If this development was successful, not only the combatants of the Li family, but also some researchers and explorers would be able to carry out their work more smoothly. From then on, the Poison King project was renamed to the Mother Tree Project. In the following few years, after countless experiments, a new team joined the Mother Tree Project and came up with a complete set of poison symbiosis theory. The theory of using poison to stimulate life force, or even replace life force to greatly extend the life of living things, was perfected bit by bit and put into experiments. This was the core of the Li family's Tree of Life plan. However, the implementation of this plan did not go smoothly. Until the eve of the Li family's destruction, after many genetic improvements and mutations, this plan still remained at the stage of poison mutant. Many years after the Li family's destruction, Yu Donglai, who was in charge of this plan at that time, had not given up trying. After combining a large amount of information left behind, he finally made the poison mutant evolve again and become a real poison immune body. This was the greatest masterpiece of Yu Donglai's life. Just like the name of the poison immune body, he was known as the Poison Doctor, and could even be said to be the #1 expert in using poison in the dark world. But his greatest masterpiece was to make a poison immune body that could be immune to any poison. Old man, can this thing really become the Tree of Life in your hands? Qin Weibai asked. It's possible, although the probability is very small, and it's not in my hands. Yu Donglai shook his head. I left a lot of information, and I will continue to study it when I have time. It can be regarded as leaving it for future generations. As long as the research continues, there will be a day of success. It's a long time. Qin Weibai smiled. But even now, it's enough to be immune to all kinds of poisons. What are you going to do with it? Yu Donglai asked in confusion. The poison used by Kunlun City to control Phoenix Pavilion is a very special kind of neurotoxin. It's difficult to find an antidote for such a toxin, so it can only produce inhibitors. Even Kunlun City can only suppress that kind of virus. Qin Weibai whispered. They have two means of control: drug control and strong spiritual suggestion. The problem of spiritual suggestion is not a problem for me, so? Qin Weibai smiled gently, and her eyes were indescribably bright. Li Qingqing will soon arrive in Tiannan. As long as this tree can successfully make Li Qingqing immune to the neurotoxin of Kunlun City, then the next thing is very simple. Her breath was very quiet, and her expression was very calm and indifferent. I want to completely destroy Kunlun City. Chapter 942. After sending Lin Fengting to the plane, Li Tianlan watched the plane get farther and farther away in his sight, and finally disappear. He stood straight and gently breathed a sigh of relief, and looked at Lin Yuxian beside him. Lin Yuxian looked a little melancholic and helpless. It might not be appropriate to say that Lin Fengting said goodbye to Li Tianlan, but as a son, Lin Yuxian came to see off his old father with sincerity. But from beginning to end, Lin Fengting did not say a few words to his son. He just talked with Li Tianlan about the origin of the murderous weapon in the cafe. Lin Yuxian was busy with various checks on the plane. After the check, Lin Fengting also left. What are you thinking about? Li Tianlan looked at his expression and asked casually. I wanted to tell him about Qingqing, but I didn't have the chance. Lin Yuxian shook his head. Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. Don't you think it's too early? Don't say that you are familiar with her. At most, you just met her, right? She may not even remember your name. Am I so insignificant? Lin Yuxian's tone was puzzled. Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and threw it to Lin Yuxian. Then he turned and walked to the black car parked in the airport. Anyway, it's too early. You can't let Uncle Lin directly propose marriage with the power and identity of the Lin clan, can you? Even if Uncle Lin is willing to do this for you, Li Shi, who has had enough of it, may not accept it. I suggest you wait. Today we go back to Tiannan. I will try to arrange some opportunities for you to be alone. Then it's up to you. All right. Lin Yuxian hesitated and nodded. He opened the door and sat in the driver's seat. He asked curiously, what did my dad say to you? For such a long time? Li Tianlong glanced at him, and did not hide anything. He raised the information in his hand and said, "There are some other questions about the origin of the murderous weapon." If Lin Yuxian was still the heir of the Lin clan, he would know these things sooner or later. Even if he had been removed from the list of heirs, he would definitely know some things in the future. Carefree was destined to be an absolute secret between the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan, but the patriarchs of some important branches would definitely know about it. Not to mention anything else, the patriarch of the Lin clan's branch in Europe would definitely know about the existence of Carefree, and Li Honghe obviously knew about it back then. Even though Lin Yuxian was no longer the heir of the Lin clan, his importance in the Lin clan was beyond doubt. The Lin clan was the god of war in Zhongzhou in the clan's plan, which meant that all branches of the Lin clan in Asia would be led by Lin Yuxian. For For Tianlong, Lin Yuxian would also be the most important ally of Emperor Dong's palace in the future. It was not inappropriate to tell him about his carefree life. After Tian Lin and Chen Lin Yuxian was He Lin. After listening to Li Tianlong's words, Lin Yuxian was silent for a long time before he asked with some uncertainty, "You could say there is, but you could also say there isn't." Li Tianlong said faintly, "No one can be sure of Wuyo's state, but its activation ability is very high. If it fights alone, its energy will be exhausted very soon. Only by combining with a human and undergoing transformation can it completely stabilize its combat capability. But who in Beihai can accept Wuyo's transformation?" It wasn't that there wasn't such a candidate, but it was obviously very difficult for Beihai to make up his mind. Wang Shengxiao would not do that unless it was absolutely necessary, let alone Wang Tianzong and Summer Solstice. It was related to the core foundation of the Wang family of Beihai. In this case, even Dijiang could not be completely trusted. Only in the hands of the lineal descendant of Beihai could Wang Shengxiao rest assured. After all, strictly speaking, Carefree were not very loyal to Beihai and the Lin clan. Rather than saying that they were guarding Beihai and the Lin clan, it was better to say that they could not leave the place where they lived. This also meant that Beihai was likely to have no candidate who could accept Carefree's transformation. In this case, Carefree might make people afraid, but it was not impossible to solve. Li Tianlong was not very afraid of Carefree's combat capability, but as the core of the life metal, its serious suppression on Heartless was the most troublesome part for him. But in a short time he could not find any solution. Lin Yuxian frowned and said nothing. "It's nothing," Li Tianlong said quietly. "After all, in the upcoming decisive battle, Beihai and I are not enemies. Maybe there will be a conflict in the end, but it will be after the enemy is killed. At that time, it is unknown how much threat Carefree can pose. It is unlikely that Beihai will use Carefree to deal with you, but that is the core of the life metal. If Beihai uses the core to plot against Heartless, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page." Lin Yuxian was a little hesitant. "It's okay." Li Tianlong looked out of the window and said faintly, "I said it in the desert. Now it is time to let the dark world know that even without Heartless, I am still invincible." A strange light flashed in Lin Yuxian's eyes. "Tianlong." The car quietly left the airport. He suddenly shouted, Li Tianlong glanced at him. "Shall we find a time to compare notes?" Lin Yuxian said with a smile. "You and me?" Li Tianlong laughed. "What kind of request is that? Just think of it as me overestimating myself." Lin Yuxian was still smiling. His smile was very peaceful. Li Tianlong nodded without hesitation and said, "Okay. Thank you." Lin Yuxian's tone was very serious. Li Tianlong shook his head, thought for a moment and said, "After the decisive battle in Beihai, leave Emperor Dong's palace. After returning to Tiannan, bring military counselor here to discuss it. Emperor Dong's palace is not short of resources now. Whatever you need, Emperor Dong's palace can give you: money, connections, talents, anything. I can also transfer some people to help you for the time being. There is about less than a year left. During this period, we can compare notes more. After the election, the situation in Zhongzhou state should stabilize. I hope that you can become an invincible realm expert by then. If everything goes well, it will be time for you to replace Kunlun City." Lin Yuxian had never been a vassal of Emperor Dong's palace. Even though he was now the commander of the nightmare army of Emperor Dong's palace, Emperor Dong's palace had always positioned him as an ally, not a subordinate. By integrating into Emperor Dong's palace, he would integrate into Zhongzhou state, establish his own branch, rebuild academy platform, and replace Kunlun city. This was the direction that Lin Yuxian was heading for. However, he never thought that his pace would be this fast. Replace Kunlun city in about a year? Isn't it too fast? Lin Yuxian retorted subconsciously. A little. Li Tianlan nodded. But when the old god falls, the new god will inevitably take over. From the Lin clan to the Li family, to the Gu family, and then to the Lin clan, it's a perfect cycle. Li Tianlan said softly. I know you are not prepared enough. But, he paused and said slowly, Gu Xingyan may not be able to hold on until you are fully prepared. End of this chapter. Chapter 943. When the taxi stopped in front of the sanatorium, the fiery sunset had disappeared. The cold chill was wrapped in the night and enveloped the world. He got out of the car and quietly looked at the warm lights in the sanatorium in front of him. He stayed there as if he was lost in memories. On the bustling street, the dense traffic flowed by. He stood quietly, looking at the direction of the sanatorium with exhaustion and confusion, like a travel-worn passerby. He couldn't tell why he came here. It was completely out of instinct. When he got the news about her, he didn't think, hesitate, or make a choice. He wanted to come here, so he came. Emperor Dong's palace was different from Kunlun city. Li Tianlan was also different from Gu Xingyun. So he knew very well that he couldn't watch silently like before. If he didn't want to lose her again, he had to try his best to fight for it. The turbulent memories were like a monstrous tide, with unparalleled power in the night. That kind of power pressed him firmly in place. And all the scenes in his mind were long and illusory like scenes of the past. The past flashed silently in his mind. He laughed. The clearest thing in his memories was not the first time they met, nor was it the many times they had gotten close but eventually distanced from each other. Instead, it was that cold and gloomy winter. In that gloomy palace, in front of countless people, she quietly floated on the beam of the bedroom. She wore a plain white dress, a simple wooden hairpin, without any extra decoration, and a plain face. On a most ordinary day, at an ordinary time, she quietly hung herself in the bedroom. So quiet, so indifferent. That year, on that day, her figure swayed in front of him like a sharp knife, piercing through his flesh, piercing through his chest, piercing through his heart, as if his entire body was being torn into countless bloody pieces. In his memory, it was a tragic world that could no longer be described as tragic. Some people's families were ruined. Some were separated from their families. Some were betrayed by their families. And some died without a complete corpse. One after another, those who stood at the peak fell with endless glory and glory. Now when he thought about it again, no one could escape unscathed. His memory was full of death, blood, and betrayal. One by one, they ended miserably and left miserably. Some died with their eyes open, and some lived a life worse than death. It was an era full of darkness and cold colors. As a survivor of that era, he was undoubtedly lucky. Lucky to see the woman he loved die in someone else's bedroom. He was fortunate enough to see his father, whom he worshipped, personally dig out his own heart. He was fortunate to see everything he had fought for being easily crushed into dust by the general trend. How lucky! The most fortunate thing was that he was still alive and had the opportunity to change everything. He took a deep breath and suppressed his overflowing thoughts bit by bit. He walked forward slowly, took out his phone and made a call. The call was quickly connected. Saint's surprised voice sounded. Jiang Shangyu. It's my honor to have my name appear in His Highness's address book. Jiang Shangyu chuckled. Saint remained calm and collected himself. He said calmly, "Why are you looking for me?" No matter how low-key Jiang Shangyu was, no one dared to say that he was a nobody. He went from the fire-flaming realm to the half-step invincible realm overnight. He was one of the most dazzling young people in Zhongzhou state today, the son of Jiang Shan. He was a general of the army headquarters, and the former vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps. No matter which identity he had, no one would think that he was a nobody. Saint would naturally remember his contact information. Not only him, but the name Jiang Shangyu was also marked as an important person even in Li Huaqing's address book. I'm at the gate of the sanatorium in Yuzhou. Jiang Shangyu's smile was peaceful. In the night, it was a smiling face that would make people feel very warm. I want to go in and visit Ms. Li Shi, and Qingcheng. On the phone, Saint was silent for a moment. If His Highness wants to report to His Majesty Li Tianlan, I can wait, Jiang Shangyu said calmly. His attitude was neither too high nor too low. When he talked about Li Tianlan, he naturally used the title of His Majesty, which made people feel no malice. Jiang Shangyu had always been a little strange about his position. After the chaos in Snow Country, his declaration that he had grown up was undoubtedly tantamount to officially parting ways with Kunlun City. Similarly, his relationship with the Wang family of Beihai was not good. His relationship with Li Tianlan was even worse. No one in Zhongzhou State would ignore the existence of Jiang Shangyu. But seriously speaking, it seemed that no one really regarded him as an enemy. For a moment, it was not easy for Saint to determine his relationship with Jiang Shangyu. All the superpowers, including Emperor Dong's palace, might be on guard against him. But speaking of hostility, it seemed that there was not much to say. Even after the incident in Beijiang today, it was still the same. The sanatorium was not a forbidden place. If Jiang Shangyu wanted to come in and visit Li Shi, he would go through the normal procedure. He would greet Saint, and Saint would not find any reason to refuse. No need. Saint said slowly, I will greet the guards. You can register and come in directly. Thank you. Jiang Shangyu smiled and hung up the phone. The registration was very simple, and entering the sanatorium was even more unimpeded. Walking through the tree-lined path in front of the sanatorium, at the end of the road, military counselor was standing there quietly. Seeing Jiang Shangyu coming over, he nodded slightly. I asked Li Shi. Saint said blandly, she agreed to see you. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, thank you. Saint turned around and led the way. After 2 steps, he suddenly asked, do you know about what happened in Beijiang? Yes. Jiang Shangyu nodded naturally. Huang Tong was too outrageous. He deserved to die. His Majesty Dong Huang did a good job. In fact, before I came, my father asked me to say thank you to His Majesty. Even before the blockade action, Huang Tong's military rank was only the same as Jiang Shangyu's. Now with his death, the army headquarters had confirmed his treason. Therefore, when talking about Huang Tong, he would naturally not be polite. Thank you? Saint repeated, thank you. His tone was a little playful and gloomy. Indeed, it is necessary for you to say thank you to His Majesty. If His Majesty is in the sanatorium, I will say it to him in person. Jiang Shangyu's smile remained unchanged. Saint took a deep look at him, narrowed his eyes, and suddenly asked, is this what the counselor wants? I don't know what you mean, Jiang Shangyu said with a smile. Your Jiang family wants to take over Beijiang in one bite. You are very ambitious, but have you ever considered the problem that you can't take it? Saint was still calm and collected. If he was facing Jiang Shan, no matter how well educated Saint was, he would inevitably sneer at him. But facing Jiang Shangyu, he had no such thoughts at all. This might also be Jiang Shangyu's characteristic. He was also arrogant, but on some sensitive matters, he could infinitely reduce his sense of existence to the extent that he did not attract attention at all. We never consider problems that don't exist. Jiang Shangyu's voice was soft, but there was a hidden needle in it. In other words, the possibility of not being able to take over Beijiang did not exist at all? Saint raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, I have thought about it for a while, but I still can't figure out who you can rely on. If you don't have a strong enough backer, even if the Jiang family manages to take over Beijiang now, they will spit it out sooner or later. The parliament can't let Beijiang stay in this state for a long time. His Majesty doesn't want to see this situation either. At that time, how can you resist it? It's certain that Zhongzhou State doesn't like to see the current situation, but the situation in Beijiang is sensitive. The parliament does need a person who can deal with all kinds of things. And in a short time, Zhongzhou State's eyes are bound to focus on His Majesty Li Tianlan and Chen Fangqing, or Gu Xingyun. Compared with Beijiang, this is the most important thing. The parliament can't take care of us in a short time. This precious time is what we need to fight for. Only with time can we make arrangements. Jiang Shangyu's frankness was a little surprising. He smiled and suddenly said, Your Highness, what do you think of the game between Emperor Dong's palace, the Wang family of Beihai, the Prince Group, and the Special Warfare Group? Saint was stunned for a moment, and then he smiled weirdly. Game? Does the Special Warfare Group still have the qualification to participate in the game? Jiang Shangyu was silent for a long time, and then he laughed and said, Indeed, after today's incident, Gu Xingyun's prestige has fallen to the bottom, and the Special Warfare Group is almost out of the game. There was no doubt that Gu Xingyun's failure had extremely serious consequences, but the more serious consequence was that he lost to Li Tianlan, who was at the height of his power, when the Special Warfare Group was caught in the scandal of treason. The relationship between Kunlun City and the Burning Legion could not be explained clearly until now. Gu Xingyun's failure would cause the foundation of Kunlun City to fall apart. Game? Now it seemed that this word was almost a joke when applied to Kunlun Shen. So isn't the answer very obvious? Saint said slowly. Great minds think alike. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a while, and then he smiled implicitly. The Special Warfare Group is out of the game, and the Prince Group is doomed to fail alone. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai, to be specific, the southeast, the wealthy families, the north, and the new groups besiege the Prince Group. The academics may stand aside, but it's impossible to be completely neutral. Under the siege of all parties, Chen Fangqing and the Prince Group absolutely can't bear it. The Prince Group falls apart, and its strength is greatly damaged. Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai have an unprecedented victory. This is probably the result of this game. So, Saint turned his head to look at Jiang Shangyu. The sword intent was flowing in his eyes, with a strong pressure, sharp and threatening. So, Jiang Shangyu spread his hands. Have you ever thought about what will happen to the Prince Group in the end? This is a group that has rooted in Zhongzhou State for hundreds of years, and its history is even earlier than that of the Southeast Group. It is deeply rooted. The Prince Group's strength may be greatly damaged, or even split, but such a group will not collapse after a setback. Your strength is very strong, but Your Highness, do you really think that the Prince Group will disappear completely after the game? Saint shook his head subconsciously. Even the most optimistic person could not say that the Prince Group would disappear completely. They were destined to suffer heavy losses, and even half of their strength could not be preserved. With the fall of Chen Fangqing, the Prince Group would inevitably suffer losses, but would it disappear completely? This was almost impossible to do, and Li Huaqing would not watch such a situation happen. So the best result was that Chen Fangqing's people would be completely destroyed, and a large number of people in the Prince Group would enter the new group and the academics. The remaining strength would be scattered in chaos, and then they would slowly integrate, elect a new leader, and stand firm again. At that time, the new Prince Group would still be a giant. Everything should be over before the election. The Prince Group will fall into a period of chaos, but as time goes by, people will always be able to see the situation clearly. Maybe in 3 months, half a year, or a year, the Prince Group will automatically integrate and reshuffle. Jiang Shangyu chuckled softly. In the cold night, his gentle smiling face had a kind of flamboyance and wildness. I seem to remember that my father's position in the Prince Group is not low. Saint. He suddenly stopped moving forward, turned around, and looked at Jiang Shangyu with a charming smile with burning eyes. Until this moment, he really understood what everything in Beijiang meant. It was like someone gently pushed away the light fog in front of him with his hand, and everything suddenly became clear. Jiang Shan and the Prince Group had been drifting apart in recent years, and they were almost like strangers. Everyone ignored Jiang Shan's position. But the moment Jiang Shangyu said it again, Saint had goosebumps all over his body. Jiang Shan belonged to the Prince Group. The Prince Group was destined to fail in the game. The power led by Chen Fangqing would be completely broken up, and other parts of the power would leave the Prince Group. The remaining strength would be reintegrated and a new leader would be elected. Who would be more suitable to be the new leader of the Prince Group than Jiang Shan, who completely controlled everything in Beijiang? Strength, money, connections, status, prestige. Jiang Shan had all the power. When the people in the Prince Group were in a panic, Jiang Shan directly controlled Beijiang completely. When the prince group woke up, there was no need to say more, and those people would approach Jiang Shan. At that time, the prince group. No, at that time it would not be the prince group at all. Maybe it would be the Beijiang group? Or the Jiang group. It was an indescribable feeling. All the temperature in his body seemed to be drawn out in an instant, and the feeling of slight trembling spread all over his body. Saint stared at Jiang Shangyu deeply. This is your purpose? The situation is like this. Jiang Shangyu's expression was a little innocent. Saint snorted with a poker face. I suddenly thought of a word that Chen Fangqing often said recently, and even used several times on His Majesty. Thief of the country. Saint looked at Jiang Shangyu and said, Your Jiang family is the real thief of the country. How dare you? Your Highness, do you want to stop it? Jiang Shangyu chuckled. What do you think? Saint narrowed his eyes. It's too late. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, It's too late. Since I can say all this, it proves that there is no need to hide a lot of things. You can't stop it, and His Majesty can't either. In fact, I know that he has ideas about Beijiang, but he is too slow. You are all too slow. If His Majesty wants Beijiang, he needs to operate, install people, and create the situation he wants. It's too slow. We are different. The Jiang family has been developing in the northern borderline for decades. The things that His Majesty wants to operate can all be omitted here. We can go straight to the point and form today's situation. It's really too late. You Jiang Shangyu chuckled. It's too late. You're right. Saint was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. In terms of the foundation in Beijiang, no one can compare with the Jiang family. This is your advantage, but your advantage is limited to Beijiang. Did the Jiang family really not consider the consequences of what they did today? What consequences? Jiang Shangyu asked indifferently. Saint sneered. You and I both know that there are only two forces in Zhongzhou state that can support Beijiang now. The first is Emperor Dong's palace, and the second is the Wang family of Beihai. The latter will not compete with Emperor Dong's palace for the control of Beijiang at this time. And the backer of the Jiang family is obviously not Emperor Dong's palace. What other answer can there be? Behind you is a foreign force, and it can only be a foreign force. With the support of a foreign force, you can afford the pension and get a lot of resources. But aren't you too naive? You want to control Beijiang, control the prince group through Beijiang, and reach into the power core of Zhongzhou state. Do you really think that Zhongzhou state can't do anything to you? In terms of the foundation in Beijiang, no one could compare with Jiangshan. Anyone or any organization that wanted to plot against Beijiang needed to make certain preparations and operations to achieve the situation they wanted. And most of these actions were aimed at Jiangshan. But Jiangshan didn't need to prepare these things at all. So as long as he wanted Beijiang, he could take over everything in Beijiang as soon as a favorable situation appeared for him. Now there was indeed no one who could organize Jiangshan's actions. But what about after that? As soon as the incident in Beijiang happened, countless people began to secretly investigate whether the backer behind the Jiang family was a foreign force. Such a fact couldn't be a secret and couldn't be hidden. Once the backer behind the Jiang family was exposed, even if Zhongzhou state had no time to care about Beijiang, it couldn't let Jiangshan do whatever he wanted in Beijiang. After all, no matter how serious the fight between Chen Fangqing and Li Tianlan was, it was an internal affair. Once a foreign force was involved, all the forces in Zhongzhou state would unite against it. There is no so-called foreign force. Jiang Shangyu said calmly. If there is, then they can't be regarded as the backer of the Jiang family. On the contrary, the Jiang family should be regarded as their backer. He smiled and said lightly, It seems that many people have misunderstood something. Why does the Jiang family have to have a backer to do things? Our Jiang family doesn't have the habit of being a dog for others. If there is a so-called backer and backer, then the backer and backer of the Jiang family are ourselves. That's all. I've been adjusting my work and rest in recent days. I haven't slept normally for a long time. Now I'm in a daze when I wake up during the day. I'm in a bad state. Usually, I'm in a better state of writing at night, but now I get up early. When night falls, I'm so sleepy that I can't open my eyes. So I didn't update for a day yesterday. I'll try to make up for it after adjusting. Chapter 944. After eating some light but reasonably well-matched nutritious meals, Li Qingqing took the initiative to clean up the dishes and dim the lights in the ward. Do you want to rest now? She sat down on a small bed that was temporarily arranged in the ward, looked at Li Shi, and asked softly, I'm not sleepy. Li Shi shook her head, and a smile appeared on her pale face. She patted the place beside her and said softly, Come and sit down. Let's talk. Her breath seemed to be weaker than when she had just woken up, but she seemed to be in good spirits. Her daughter, who had been worried about her, was brought back safely by Li Tianlan at the fastest speed. Gu Xingyun fought with Li Tianlan with the 10 Supreme Sword formation as the foundation, but he was completely defeated. His mental state, which had been tense for many years, seemed to relax suddenly. In the afternoon, Li Shi had a little fever. After taking the medicine, her body temperature dropped a little. She seemed to be slowly transforming into a real person, gradually getting rid of the beautiful but lifeless state of a puppet. Oh. Li Qingqing nodded, walked over, picked up the kettle, poured a glass of water, and handed it to Li Shi. When she took it, she stretched out her small hand and touched Li Shi's forehead. She said, Your body temperature is normal. Yes. Li Shi held the cup and looked at her daughter seriously. After a long time, she laughed at herself. An extremely ironic fact was clearly placed in front of the mother and daughter. They were biological mother and daughter. Li Qingqing was almost 20 years old this year. But they were not familiar with each other. They were really not familiar with each other. It was an extremely absurd but extremely cruel fact. Li Shi rarely saw Li Qingqing on weekdays. Although both mother and daughter were in Kunlun City, they were strictly controlled by Gu Xingyun most of the time. In the few meetings, Li Shi, who was like a walking corpse, did not have much specific image in her daughter's heart. On the contrary, under psychological suggestion, Gu Xingyun was closer to Li Shi. Although Gu Xingyun was not a good father at all, at least his sense of existence was many times that of Li Shi. So at this time, without Gu Xingyun, when she was alone with her daughter, Li Shi obviously had a lot to say, but she didn't know what to say for a while. We will go to Tiannan tomorrow. Will we settle down in Xianyuan City in the future? Li Qingqing carefully cut an apple and took the initiative to speak. Li Shi was stunned and chuckled. You don't like it? Li Qingqing took a small bite of the apple. Her usually calm eyes revealed a trace of confusion. After a while, she shook her head and said softly, I don't know either. It had been less than a day since she left Kunlun City, and she couldn't adapt to the current life where she didn't know what to do at all. She didn't care about Kunlun City and Gu Xingyun, but she didn't resent them either. She suddenly left that place and came to her mother, who was a little strange but had never been far away from her. What she had in her heart was pure discomfort. Then you can think about it. Li Shi stretched out her hand and carefully stroked her daughter's soft hair. Her voice was distant and clear, as soft as the wind. To be exact, I will go to Tiannan tomorrow and settle down in Xianyuan City. If you don't like it there, tell my brother-in-law. Well, tell His Majesty Donghuang that he can stay in Yuzhou, go to Huading, go to Jiangxia, or go abroad. If you don't want to listen to him, it's fine. I can give you a sum of money. You can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. Carefully, she held the woman in her arms. After her infancy, it was the first time for her to do this for so many years. Feeling Li Qingqing's stiff body, Li Shi's body trembled slightly. Qingqing, I'm not a good mother. This is the truth. I don't even deserve to be a mother. For so many years, I'm sorry. All the things that a mother can give, I'm not worthy of it. All the things that a mother can give me have never been given to me, but at least now. The most important thing I can give is also what I've been looking forward to for many years. She held her daughter tightly and whispered, I'm free, truly free. From now on, no one will restrain me. You can choose not to forgive me or even leave me and never come back. But I'm free. Even Li Tianlan won't force me to do anything or go anywhere. I'm the only one who can live in Xianyuan City. I can refuse. Oh. After a long time, she nodded quietly in Li Shi's arms and whispered, I don't know where to go. I'll go to Xianyuan City with you. Li Shi nodded hard. She was so excited that she couldn't speak for a while. I heard that Xianyuan City is very beautiful. If we go there, we should be able to get a good house, right? Li Qingqing straightened up from Li Shi's arms and smiled softly. Of course. Li Shi said softly. You can choose from every place in Xianyuan City. She said this with great confidence. She had decided to join Emperor Dong's palace, not being coerced or given away, but voluntarily. Now she had not recovered from her serious injury, and it was estimated that it would be difficult for her to recover to the real peak of the invincible realm. But as long as she had time, she could completely recover to a realm infinitely close to the peak of the invincible realm. In this case, even if her body had not recovered for the time being, she would definitely become the third deputy palace master of Emperor Dong's palace after entering Emperor Dong's palace. She didn't need to worry about some treatment issues at all. Li Qingqing, who was a little confused, nodded and glanced at everything in the room absent-mindedly. She suddenly raised the apple in her hand. It's very sweet. Do you want it? Li Shi looked at her and shook her head slightly. Then let's have a rest, Li Qingqing said. No hurry, Li Shi whispered. I just received a call from Saint. A special guest is coming. A special guest? Li Qingqing blinked her eyes. Is he here to visit? He did say that he was here to visit me. Li Shi said thoughtfully. But the main purpose should be for you. Li Qingqing frowned slightly. Who is it? There was a knock on the door before Li Shi answered, slow and clear. Li Shi raised her eyebrows slightly, sat up straight, and said loudly, Please come in. The door was slowly pushed open. Jiang Shangyu walked in with a calm face. Li Qingqing's rosy mouth opened slightly, and she was a little surprised. She naturally knew Jiang Shangyu. Before he completely fell out with Kunlun City, Li Qingqing had contact with Jiang Shangyu several times, and even played in Beijiang for a period of time. Gu Xingyan mentioned Jiang Shangyu to her several times. In his words, he almost said that Jiang Shangyu would be her husband in the future. There was no willingness or unwillingness, no liking or disliking. Under the subtle psychological suggestion, Li Qingqing just didn't object. That was all. But now what did he come here for? For herself? Li Qingqing suddenly felt a little strange in her heart. Jiang Shangyu smiled and nodded to Li Qingqing, then bowed deeply to Li Shi and said with a smile, Long time no see, Aunt Li Shi. Long time no see. Li Shi nodded and didn't express anything about the aunt and the sincere bow. In fact, I have always wanted to see you, but this sanatorium has always been sensitive. Jiang Shangyu stood there with a soft smile and didn't sit down. How is your body, aunt? Not bad. Thank you, child Jiang. Li Shi smiled. Please sit down and have some fruit. Thank you, aunt. Jiang Shangyu nodded politely, took out a small box that didn't look very eye-catching, and said with a smile, The Jiang family doesn't have any good recovery medicine, but Beijiang is a vast land with abundant resources. We have collected some rare medicinal materials. This is the desert blood of Beijiang. It should be helpful for Auntie's recovery. Desert blood. Not only Li Shi and her daughter, but also Saint, who was guarding outside the ward, suddenly raised his eyebrows. This was one of the most expensive medicinal materials in Beijiang, an extremely rare plant, and one of the main materials of the top healing potions. Not to mention other things, a simple piece of desert blood could be regarded as a holy medicine for healing, and it was of great benefit to Li Shi's body recovery. Although the box in Jiang Shangyu's hand was inconspicuous, if it was given to a force like the Wang family of Beihai that mastered unique gene medicine technology, it could easily be exchanged for an expensive sports car. This was definitely a heavy gift. This gift is too heavy. Li Shi raised her eyebrows slightly and shook her head. Thank you, child Jiang. I appreciate your kindness, but desert blood is not. This is my gift as a junior. Jiang Shangyu smiled softly, and his voice was full of persistence. In any case, I hope you can accept it, aunt. Li Shi pondered a little, glanced at Li Qingqing and nodded. In that case, thank you, child Jiang. Jiang Shangyu waved his hand casually and sat down on the chair. Child Jiang, you came here today not just to visit my injury, right? Li Shi took the box and asked calmly. There is one more thing I want to discuss with you, aunt. Jiang Shangyu came straight to the point. He came a little late today, and it was not suitable for him to stay for too long at this time. Say it. Li Shi looked at him politely. It's about Qingcheng. Jiang Shangyu hesitated a little and said it directly. His face was serious and sincere. Aunt, if possible, I want to take Qingcheng away from Yuzhou. Huh? Li Qingcheng frowned slightly and glanced at Jiang Shangyu, a little confused. I'm sorry, no. There was no hesitation, no surprise, and she didn't even ask why. Li Shi gave her answer directly. No. Simple and direct, without the slightest leeway. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a moment, looked at Li Qingcheng, and said in a low voice, Can I ask why? Because you can't. Li Shi's voice was very light, but the content was extremely tough. Jiang Shangyu paused and fell silent. His request might be a little abrupt, but before he came, he really didn't expect Li Shi to be so tough. It was clear that she didn't want to talk about this topic at all. There was no reason why not. If he had to ask, that was no. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Shi quietly. Under the soft light, his pair of gentle eyes, which usually had a smile on them, inadvertently had a sharp and aggressive look in them. Li Shi also looked at him quietly, without saying a word. If, Jiang Shangyu suddenly laughed. I mean, if, Aunt, I must take Qingcheng away? His voice was very slow, but every word seemed to be filled with a sense of oppression. Then you will die. An indifferent voice suddenly rang out. The space in the ward suddenly fluctuated. Silently, a faint sword energy condensed in the room, and finally turned into a sword energy projection of Li Tianlan. He directly answered the question for Li Shi. Die here. Chapter 945. I mean, what if I have to take Qingcheng away? Then you'll die. Die here. Simple, clear and straightforward. What Jiang Shangyu said was his boldest idea. Li Tianlan's answer was the most serious consequence. No one would doubt Jiang Shangyu's determination, but no one would doubt Li Tianlan's strength. The room suddenly quieted down. Li Tianlan's sword chi projection stood in the middle of the ward, looking at Jiang Shangyu lightly. Jiang Shangyu's pupils contracted slightly, and he smiled slowly. Your Majesty, long time no see. Li Tianlan was expressionless. Do you want to try to grab her? Jiang Shangyu's breath surged several times, and finally it slowly converged. He said with emotion, Your Majesty is as tough as ever. He did have the idea of grabbing people. Li Shi had not recovered. Saint was guarding outside. In such a case, if he suddenly took Li Qingcheng away, he would have a great chance to escape. But it was completely different with Li Tianlan. When he entered the sanatorium, he did not notice Li Tianlan's breath, but now the projection of the other party appeared in the ward, so the real body must be not far away. Even if he could grab her, Li Tianlan had ruthlessness and would catch up with him in an instant. It made no sense to grab her by force. He sat in the chair again, spread out his hands, and smiled helplessly. Grabbing is not my intention. But you do want to do it. Li Shi said lightly, and her calm eyes stared at Jiang Shangyu. Why do you want to grab my daughter? Jiang Shangyu was silent. He was silent for a long time before he looked up at Li Qingcheng. Li Qingcheng frowned slightly and looked at him. I like her. Jiang Shangyu's voice was low and frank. I can give her happiness. Tiannan. Xianyuan City. Under the cover of night, a black Rolls-Royce stopped in front of a cafe in the center of Xianyuan City. This custom-made Rolls-Royce with countless advanced privacy technologies was originally a gift from the Wang family of Beihai to Emperor Dong's palace, when the headquarters of Emperor Dong's palace was built. It was Emperor Dong's car, but now it had become Qin Weibai's special car. Wherever this car was, Qin Weibai was there. Horsewoman got out of the car, bowed slightly, and opened the back door of the car. Qin Weibai walked out of the car, looked at the cafe in front of her, and narrowed her eyes slightly. Let's go. She stood in front of the door for a while before slowly walking into the cafe. The light in the cafe was soft and bright. A Caucasian lady with blonde hair and blue eyes was playing the piano attentively. Amidst the pleasant music, a figure in the corner of the cafe stood up and waved at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai walked over with a calm expression. In the corner was a young man who seemed to always have a subtle smile on his face. When he saw that Qin Weibai had noticed him, he sat down again and looked at Qin Weibai with a somewhat presumptuous gaze. Even though it was winter, The weather in Tiannan was still warm. Qin Weibai was wearing a thin white sweater and black wide-legged pants. Her hair was tied up. She was 1.76 meters tall and wore a pair of 7-centimeter high heels. She looked like a fairy as she walked. She was tall enough to make most men feel ashamed of their inferiority. The man unscrupulously sized up her face, chest, waist, abdomen, as well as the pair of long legs that made people's mouth dry under the wide pants. This was no longer a simple beauty. It was a kind of beauty that could conquer anyone in an instant. There was no flaw in her beauty. She completely fulfilled the fantasies of perfection that most people had. If there really was a goddess, she would probably be like this. She didn't look like an ordinary person. She was otherworldly. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the smile in his eyes became more and more intense. Horsewoman, who was following Qin Weibai, tensed up. It seemed that she already had the intention to kill. Your eyes are very presumptuous. Qin Weibai sat down opposite her and said in a calm tone, if Tianlan were here, he would have your eyes gouged out. I just suddenly remembered that someone told me something. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows. He said that a woman like you shouldn't be conquered by any man by nature. You should conquer all men and conquer the world. You should be a goddess high above, an inviolable queen. As long as he thought of how docile you would be every night, he felt like his heart was being twisted by a knife. He was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He turned a blind eye to the furious horsewoman. He laughed presumptuously and said presumptuously. His tone was full of emotions. Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. Her tone was somewhat puzzled and confused. After a long time, she slowly asked, Jiang Shangyu, are you tired of living? Don't do it. Jiang Shangyu smiled and said, otherwise I can guarantee that I won't regret it. I won't go with you. Li Qingqing finally spoke and said the first sentence after Jiang Shangyu entered the ward. I'm sorry, but now I don't want to go anywhere. Jiang Shangyu looked at her calmly and shook his head gently. I don't know what will happen if you leave me, but I can be sure that only by my side is the best for you. He thought of the lonely figure hanging in his bedroom in winter again and said in a low voice, I can give you happiness. What I don't want is not happiness. Li Qingqing looked at Jiang Shangyu and said seriously. The car slowly entered the sanatorium. Li Tianlan suddenly smiled and said, it's a bit interesting. What? Lin Yuxian, who was driving, raised his eyebrows slightly. Jiang Shangyu is here. Well, he came to visit Li Shi. He also wants to take your goddess away by force. Li Tianlan shook his head. I really don't know who gave him the courage. Lin Yuxian's face suddenly changed. He wants to take Qingqing by force. It's just a thought. Why are you panicking? Saint is watching. We'll be right there. Li Tianlan moved his body. After tonight, I will let him understand that there are some things that he can't even think about. Under the light, Li Tianlan, who was condensed by the sword energy, began to dissipate little by little, becoming thin and empty. Jiang Shangyu did not relax. Instead, his body tightened again. Li Tianlan cancelled the sword energy projection, which meant that he could appear in the ward at any time. Looking at Li Qingqing, who obviously showed her refusal, Jiang Shangyu took a deep breath, slowly stood up, and took a step in the direction of Li Qingqing. Li Qingqing tilted her head, looked at Jiang Shangyu, and asked softly, do you want to force me? Jiang Shangyu stopped where he was. He looked deeply at the face in front of him, which he had remembered for too long, and whispered, I want to talk to you alone. Of course the dead won't regret it. Qin Weibai took the menu and ordered a glass of lemonade. Her tone was indifferent. Dead. I didn't say that. I have no idea about you. The goddess is high and mighty, but as a mortal, I can still understand. I know what kind of person is suitable for me, and I know what kind of person I like. I was just passing that sentence. Even if I'm guilty, it's not enough for the crime of blasphemy, right? Jiang Shangyu said softly. Qin Weibai did not speak. Her fingers were pointing at the menu. Suddenly, she froze in place and did not look up for a long time. Did it remind you of anything strange? Jiang Shangyu smiled playfully. Do you know the crime of blasphemy? Qin Weibai lowered her head, and her voice was cold. What do you think? Jiang Shangyu laughed. There was a kind of arrogance on his face that had almost never been shown. Blasphemy. In this era, this word could barely be applied to the Holy Land of Italos. But in another era, when no one was sure whether it was the past or the future, the word blasphemy had almost become a special word in Emperor Dong's palace. Behind this word were the lives of 6 patriarchs of wealthy families, more than 20 dignitaries of various countries, 3 princesses, 3 princes, and 4 invincible realm experts. These people were all defined as blasphemy by Emperor Dong's palace. The most fundamental reason was that they had offended the Empress of Emperor Dong's palace with words, or some of their eyes. That was an unimaginably brutal and oppressive absolute rule. The goddess of that era really stood at the height of overlooking all living beings. In front of her, almost no one dared to look directly at that cold and perfect face, except for Emperor Dong. Qin Weibai was in a trance for a moment. She handed the menu to Horsewoman standing aside, and her expression gradually became cold. "It's really you. It's not me." Jiang Shangyu laughed. This was not a denial, but a fact. Qin Weibai understood what this sentence meant in an instant. She was silent for a few seconds and said, "Where are you now?" "He was asking about you." "Not him." "Well," Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Now I should be negotiating with Li Tianlan in Yuzhou." Qin Weibai completely understood what Jiang Shangyu meant when he said at the beginning, "Don't do anything. Otherwise, it would definitely not be him who would regret." She was now facing Jiang Shangyu at the same time. In Yuzhou, Li Tianlan was also facing Jiang Shangyu. Qin Weibai closed her eyes. Her heartbeat became extremely fierce in an instant. All kinds of messy thoughts swept through her mind like a storm. She subconsciously clenched her hands. At this moment, she suddenly thought of Molad in the Holy Land and His Majesty behind him. At that time, it was not her who went to the Holy Land, but she also knew this news. She recalled some details of the chaos in Snow Country, as well as the details of the major forces against Beihai. Forcing herself to calm down, Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes tightly. "You planned the thing in Beihai? You're exaggerating. I just added fuel to the fire. This thing is fundamentally a conflict between Beihai and Zhongzhou State. It's just that Emperor Dong's palace rose too quickly, so I was also involved." Jiang Shangyu said lightly. The lemonade was served. Qin Weibai held the cup and drank the water. She took a deep breath and suddenly turned to look at Horsewoman. "Go to the car and wait for me," she said calmly, and her tone was indisputable. Horsewoman hesitated, then turned and walked out of the cafe. "Wise decision." Jiang Shangyu smiled. Qin Weibai stared at Jiang Shangyu coldly. "You're not dead. That's not surprising." Jiang Shangyu shook her head. "Because I'm not an exception. You're not dead either, aren't you?" "Knights Templar, the Jiang family of South America, East Island." Qin Weibai murmured to herself. "What a big deal. Compared with you, this is nothing. Samsara Palace is amazing. That's what a force should be like. What about me? Now Knights Templar is basically loyal to me, but the Jiang family of South America and East Island are at most cooperating with me. At most, I can occupy some dominance. I'm not as lucky as you. When you went to the Wang family of Beihai and the 24 moves of sword fought against the 6 paths of reincarnation, I hid in the dark. But no one thought that you would be so crazy that you chose to die together with Wang Xingxiao. I had a reason to take action, but I was too late. You smeared the blood of Vermilion Bird and Xuanwu on Xianyuan Feng, and the final outbreak of ruthlessness involved me. When you came back, you could meet Wu Wei, and he could use years of fate to heal your injury. But what about me? 2 deadly poisons and terrifying injuries were in my body. I was lucky to be alive. When your injuries stabilized, I was still on my last breath. When you began to try to recover your cultivation, I was still at death's door. When your cultivation began to stabilize, I found you. We shared the burden of your injuries and barely survived." Jiang Shangyu laughed and said somewhat mockingly, "And then? When you left Zhongzhou State and began to build Samsara Palace, I probably just entered the chi-controlling realm. When the master of Samsara Palace was famous, I hadn't even entered the fire-flaming realm. I can't compare with you. I have everything I have today, because I carefully accumulated it little by little. You are different. You have everything you have today, because you took it by the way. Qin Weibai listened quietly and looked at Jiang Shangyu indifferently. So, now you're not going to hide it anymore? It's not necessary. Jiang Shangyu chuckled softly. The time is ripe. Your sword over Mormons decided a lot of things. Next, it should be my time. Why did you accept Wang Shengxiao's invitation back then? To avenge your father? But he had already died at that time, and the Wang family of Beihai was also responsible for your father's death. If that was not an invitation. Jiang Shangyu lowered his head and clenched the coffee cup in his hand. He was silent for a long time before he suddenly asked, "Do you have someone you like?" The kind of person who would disregard everything for her. From the first time he saw her, he felt that she was destined to be with him. The cold wind at night blew across the rooftop. Li Qingcheng slightly wrapped her coat around herself and said, "What do you want to say to me?" "A lot of things." Jiang Shangyu seemed to want to carve this figure deeply in his eyes. "But I suddenly don't know what to say." Li Qingcheng was silent. She lowered her head and slowly tied her long hair into a simple ponytail. Jiang Shangyu walked to the edge of the rooftop, lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and laughed. "You know, from the first time I saw you, I was sure of one thing. Whether you are a princess, a chess piece, or anything else, I must make you my wife." It's been many years. The smoke rose from the corner of his mouth into the night sky. He muttered to himself, "It has never changed." Many years? Li Qingqing hesitated. In her memory, they had only known each other for 2 or 3 years. "You know what? I've always known your situation in Kunlun City. I know the contradiction between Gu Xingyun and Li Shi. I know the reason why you were caught in the middle and became a victim. Hey, what I want to do most in my life is not to fight for hegemony or power. My request has always been very simple. I want my family to live a better life, so that my father won't work so hard. I want the person I like to live a happier life and not be so helpless. I want to live like a human being and not be so incompetent. This is all my dream. What's the point of living a life and ruling the world? It's good to be happy, carefree and free." He looked up at the deep winter night sky of Yuzhou City and murmured, "But some people's starting points are predestined. In this circle, if we want to protect our family, protect our lover, and live like a human being, we have to fight for something and kill some people. A few years ago, at the beginning, I was really powerless. Not to mention living like a human being. Even being alive was a very hard thing. I survived the most desperate period. In the past few years, the Jiang family has developed well. If there is no accident, I will soon go to Kunlun City and bring you out. Whatever you want, as long as I have it, I can give it to you. If I don't have it, I will try my best to give it to you. I have imagined our marriage, a grand wedding, the attention of the world, and making you the happiest person. Half a month, at most half a month, and I will be able to do all of this. It's a pity. Only half a month, and everything may be different." "Maybe." Li Qingcheng looked at Jiang Shangyu quietly indifferent. "Come with me, Qingcheng." Jiang Shangyu turned around and looked at her. "You can have whatever you want. What Emperor Dong's palace can give you, now the Jiang family can also give you." The wind whistled fiercely on the rooftop at night. Slowly, Li Qingcheng shook her head. "Sorry. What do you want to say?" Qin Weibai's voice was cold and indifferent in the soft voice. "You avoided my question." Jiang Shangyu smiled playfully. "Are you saying that until now, you are not sure whether you love Li Tianlan or not? Or are you not sure whether you love Li Tianlan or Dongqing Huangtu?" Qin Weibai twitched the corner of her mouth and said calmly, "Nonsense. Maybe." Jiang Shangyu picked up the cup, took a sip of the cold coffee and said quietly, "I'm here today with full sincerity, and I hope you won't let my kindness down. We both have things that we value and people that we value. You can look at the world and give Li Tianlan a beautiful country. I'm not so broad-minded. I just want to protect my family and the woman I love. We may have grudges, but on this point, let's put ourselves in each other's shoes. Because if Li Tianlan is hurt, what you will do is what I may do now. Today's meeting is a negotiation, or I beg you. In short, don't force me to be a madman. I hate doing anything at all costs, including standing with Wang Shengxiao to deal with you." Qin Weibai's eyes moved, and she said thoughtfully, "That is to say, before the war, the Wang family of Beihai controlled Li Qingqing? No, Li Qingqing had committed suicide at that time. Your father? Well, who is that? Jiang Shangyu's eyes were as deep as the abyss. After a long silence, he sighed in a low voice. It's Qingqing's child. Even if the child is not mine, but, he shook his head fiercely and seemed a little irritated. I'm the same as you. There are always some feelings, aren't there? Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes and played with the lemon water in her hand. After a while she said slowly, No, we are not the same. I love him. Thinking of Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai's eyes were gentle and somewhat intoxicating. It was a kind of joy from the heart. I can also be sure that he loves me, too. A few years ago in Huading, when he saw me for the first time, I saw the emotion in his eyes that may not be strong but was obvious enough. She smiled softly and looked at Jiang Shangyu, whose face was a little ugly. I can do anything for him, and I also believe that he can do anything for me. I am his woman, and in the future, I will even be the Empress of East Emperor, or even the Empress of the whole dark world. We have each other, in the past and in the future. So we are not the same. She took a step back gently. Li Qingqing's expression was as indifferent as a beautiful landscape painting. Full of sincerity and frank love came to her face, so heavy that she even found it difficult to resist. She slowly shook her head. Perhaps Mother is right. What I want and need the most right now is freedom. Master Jiang, I can't go with you. I'm sorry. I can give you freedom. Jiang Shangyu suddenly took a step forward. No one will restrain you, neither will I. On the contrary, if you leave with me, you will be freer than you are in Emperor Dong's palace. Much freer. Why don't you understand? You are destined to be my woman. Come with me, and you can do whatever you want by my side. I've heard people say that the so-called freedom is not that we can do whatever we want. It is that we can do whatever we don't want to do. Some thin clothes fluttered in the night wind. Li Qingqing smiled faintly. She was quiet and tranquil, like a lotus. I don't want to go with you. It is my freedom. You want to take me by force. No matter what you will give me in the future. In fact, I am not free. Jiang Shangyu was stunned. Thank you, Master Jiang. Li Qingqing said softly. Thank you for your love, but for me, I don't think it is a good thing to accept a relationship. As for marriage, now that I have freedom, I won't think about marriage. Maybe I won't think about it in my life. I'm very grateful for your love, but, she smiled and said the cruelest words in the most direct manner. I don't love you. She doesn't love you. Qin Weibai looked at Jiang Shangyu, who was a little gloomy. Li Qingqing doesn't belong to you in the past or the future. You have never owned her. Maybe you can give up everything for her. You want to change her fate, but in fact, you didn't do what you could. On the contrary, Tianlan has changed her fate. She is free. You have the right to pursue her, but you are not qualified to control her life under the excuse of loving her. You are not even qualified to sit here and talk about this topic. Do you think this argument can persuade me? Jiang Shangyu's expression changed little by little and finally became expressionless. His voice was a little cold. I'm not paranoid, but it doesn't mean that I don't insist. I was born as a human being, and I have always wanted to live like a human being. Everyone has something that they must insist on and can't give up. I don't want to persuade anyone. This is just a fact. Qin Weibai's voice was light. A fact? If the fact is that Li Tianlan met Dongqing Rushi first, fulfilled the engagement and returned to the Dongqing clan, and then met you, but didn't talk to you, would you be willing to give up? Jiang Shangyu asked with a sneer. I'm different from you. I helped Tianlan. The final battle of Heaven Capital, the chaos of Snow Country, and now the merger of Samsara Palace into Emperor Dong's palace were all just help. I never tried to control Tianlan's life and path. If what you said really happened, then I wouldn't give up. I would pursue him and even seduce him. As long as I stayed with him, I would do anything, but I would never control him. And your assumption is just an assumption. In fact, after he left the Li family, the first person he met was me. We may be the same, because we both have advantages that others can't compare with, advantages that can change everything. I didn't change anything and still became Tianlan's woman. And you didn't change anything. You could have made Li Qingqing fall in love with you and never leave you. When you could have done that, you didn't do anything. This can only be said to be your stupidity. Don't you think it's too late to make up for it after Tianlon made his move? I'm not here to talk about this today. Jiang Shangyu was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, if I have to say, I can only say that my situation was not very good in the past few years. You can call the wind and summon the rain, but for me until more than 2 years ago, it was very difficult to simply live. I wasn't sure what kind of future I could give Qingcheng, so I naturally wouldn't provoke her. But it doesn't matter. I'm here today for only one request. Why do you think I'll agree? Qin Weibai looked at Jiang Shangyu expressionlessly. Because of you, Jiang Shangyu said blandly. It may not be appropriate to talk about the other you, but you and I both know that you have fallen in Mormons. You, who Li Tianlon cares about most, have fallen in Mormons. Me, you and you are essentially the same, but this is our feeling. At least in Li Tianlon's eyes, you are just a fake. If you promise me, then the one in front of you today is not Jiang Shangyu. You can stay with Li Tianlon and spend the rest of your life with him. If you refuse me, then the one sitting here today is me. Two of me appear in Yuzhou and Tiannan at the same time. What will Li Tianlon think? I can help you keep a secret, and I can naturally see through your disguise. No matter how similar a fake is, it can't be completely real. Qin Weibai slowly stood up. Jiang Shangyu looked at him and narrowed his eyes. The choice is between me and you. You should know what this means. To you, Qingcheng isn't someone you can't give up on. Also, this can't be considered giving up. I'm the most suitable man for her, and she is destined to be my woman. Only by being together with me can she obtain true happiness. Swish. Qin Weibai raised her palm. Half a glass of lemon water was directly splashed on Jiang Shangyu's face. Jiang Shangyu slowly wiped his face and smiled with a cold expression. You are the fake, Qin Weibai said lightly. When she turned around, her slender and thin figure drew a long shadow in the moonlight. The shadow moved slowly and finally disappeared on the rooftop, blending into the light. The cold chill swept the whole world with the airflow. Jiang Shangyu stood there and watched Li Qingqing's figure disappear completely. He closed his eyes with some pain. Obviously, your courtship failed. In the indifferent voice, Li Tianlan's real body appeared in front of him. Jiang Shangyu opened his eyes and smiled. It's just temporary. Still not giving up? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. She is destined to be my woman. As time goes by, she will find that only I am the most suitable for her. Jiang Shangyu took a deep breath and looked at Li Tianlan with complicated eyes. The Jiang family plotted against Beijiang and ruined Li Tianlan's plan. But Li Tianlan took Li Qingqing away and ruined his life. He laughed self-deprecatingly, looked at Li Tianlan, and said seriously, if you are willing to help me, then I will owe you a favor. At the right time, it is not impossible for the Jiang family to return Beijiang to you. We have many choices in our lives. Different choices represent different directions. Our greatest freedom is the right to make choices. Jiang Shangyu looked at Li Tianlan seriously and held out his hand to him. The lemon water slid down his face and dripped on his clothes. Jiang Shangyu lowered his head and wiped it casually. He said calmly, Qingqing has the life toxin of Kunlun City in her body. There are also strong spiritual hints. You Donglai can solve the first one. You can solve the second one. Solve the problem and help me get Qingqing. This is all I ask. If you help me, I can let you get everything. If you refuse me, I can let you lose everything. He looked up at Qin Weibai. What's your choice? Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. After a long time, she took a deep breath and said calmly, I am tired. Goodbye. That was her answer. Not having an answer was also an answer. She nodded to Jiang Shangyu and turned to leave. Jiang Shangyu sat in his seat motionless. He looked at Qin Weibai's back quietly and narrowed his eyes. He looked extremely dangerous. The cold wind blew. Jiang Shangyu's windbreaker fluttered backward. His palm slowly reached out to Li Tianlan. It was steady and peaceful, as if it contained great power. Li Tianlan looked at the palm calmly. The moonlight shone down. In the cold light, this scene seemed to be completely frozen. Jiang Shangyu's voice sounded almost word by word. We can choose many things, many directions, and many positions, which represent different situations and destinies. Now, Your Majesty Li Tianlan. Jiang Shangyu's palm stopped steadily in front of Li Tianlan, as if it had stopped for many years. His voice was deep and oppressive. Tell me your choice. Do you choose to be my friend? Or an enemy? Chapter 946. Friend or enemy? Most of the time, the so-called fate and different directions were chosen in an instant. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Shangyu's outstretched palm. Jiang Shangyu's expression was calm and serious. The smile that seemed to cover his face at all times disappeared completely. His voice was clear, firm and steady. This was the Jiang Shangyu he was familiar with, fragile and somewhat weak. He might be a genius in other people's eyes, but in Li Tianlan's eyes, it was just a piece of cake to kill him. Jiang Shangyu did not have the strength to threaten him, let alone the power to threaten him. But at this moment, he really felt a sense of oppression that was not strong but real. The hand reached in front of him, and his life seemed to really have two directions, to the left or to the right. I think of our first meeting. Li Tianlan's voice was calm and cold. Jiang Shangyu frowned slightly. You mean in East Island? Li Tianlan glanced at him. I'm not sure what the reason is, but I can be sure of my feeling. Maybe it's your eyes when I first saw you, or maybe it's your expression. It seems that everything is normal, but every time I think about it, I have a very uncomfortable feeling. You can say it's intuition. From that moment on, I was sure that we would not be friends. His voice was clear, and his eyes were clear and rational. Jiang Shangyu looked at him for a long time. So, he said slowly, Your Majesty, are you rejecting my kindness? Your kindness means nothing to me. We are not friends. As for whether we are enemies or not, I don't care. If I have to make it clear, you are not qualified to be my friend or my enemy. Li Qingqing is not my private property. I brought her out of Kunlun City, and I didn't want to control her. She is free, and I will respect her will. You must also respect it. There is no possibility of a deal in this matter. Jiang Shangyu narrowed his eyes. His expression became indifferent little by little. The palm slowly retracted. The corner of his mouth moved, and he was about to speak. Think about the consequences before you speak. Li Tianlan said blandly. I didn't kill you today because I saw your sincerity and respect Li Qingqing. If you don't know what's good for you, you don't have to go back today. Jiang Shangyu's expression froze slightly. He laughed. I see. In that case, Your Majesty. He bowed slightly with a meaningful look in his eyes. Goodbye. Li Tianlan did not respond. Jiang Shangyu jumped directly from the rooftop. His figure landed on the ground and strode out of the sanatorium. He did not look back from the beginning to the end. Li Tianlan looked at his back quietly. He could feel Jiang Shangyu's determination. That was not giving up. Instead, it was a determination to do whatever it took. Lin Yuxian appeared silently beside Li Tianlan. His eyes were a little complicated. What will he do? I don't know. Li Tianlan shook his head expressionlessly. But I have an intuition that it might be a wrong decision not to kill him tonight. Then why not kill him? Lin Yuxian had some doubts. Jiang Shangyu's status in Zhongzhou State was not low now. But if Li Tianlan insisted on killing him, no one could stop him. There might be trouble afterward, but Emperor Dong's palace could handle it. In that case, why not do it? Because of Li Qingqing. Li Tianlan smiled and said, The life of Li Shi and Gu Xingyun is not harmonious. Li Qingqing grew up with them. You know what she thinks about marriage and feelings without thinking. She even made it clear just now that she would not consider the idea of marriage in this life. She left you such a rival in love, and let you compete with each other. Maybe it can help you. Otherwise, if you only rely on yourself to pester Li Qingqing, it is basically impossible. Damn, you don't believe in my charm? Lin Yuxian stared and was a little speechless. This is my brother-in-law's understanding of my brother-in-law. Li Tianlan laughed. Lin Yuxian chuckled without emotion and suddenly said, That's not the whole reason, is it? Yes. Li Tianlan nodded. One more thing. If I kill him tonight, I feel that there will be trouble too. It's better to keep him alive and see who is behind him first. Walking out of the sanatorium, Jiang Shangyu, who did not feel embarrassed at all without a special car to pick him up, waited for a long time before he got a taxi. The taxi went straight to the airport. In the back of the car, Jiang Shangyu took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected, but there was no sound. "How is it?" Jiang Shangyu coughed and asked. "The negotiations have fallen apart." On the other end of the phone, the calm voice sounded emotionless. "I was splashed with a glass of lemonade." Doesn't she care that she's a fake?" Jiang Shangyu sneered. She said sham exhausted. Jiang Shangyu fell silent and tried to think about the meaning of this sentence. After a while he slowly said, "I can imagine, but I can't understand." "What about you?" On the other end of the phone, His Majesty, who was far away in Xianyuan City, asked. "The negotiations have fallen apart," Jiang Shangyu said calmly. His Majesty sighed. "You're really useless." Jiang Shangyu said expressionlessly. "Keep scolding. Don't stop. Be ruthless." His Majesty was speechless. He was also Jiang Shangyu. Their experiences might be different, but in essence they were the same person, and their thinking was completely the same. If they swore, they would be scolding themselves, and even the words they said were the same. "Let's snatch him." After a moment of silence, the two of them spoke in unison. "Let's take him back first." They spoke in unison as well. After a short silence, Jiang Shangyu agreed and looked at the scenery outside the rough car. "We'll talk about it when I get to Xianyuan City." On the rooftop, Li Tianlan accompanied Lin Yuxian to smoke a cigarette. He glanced at him and said with a smile, "Hey, are you still depressed? Don't think so much. There will always be opportunities in the future. If I were you, I would go to get close to Li Qingqing now. What are you thinking about here?" Lin Yuxian snorted. "If you were me, would you really go?" "No." Li Tianlan thought for a moment. "It's not easy to be a bootlicker. You can also catch up with my sister like this. God is blind." Lin Yuxian looked disdainful. "How many times have I said that it's your sister who chased me?" Li Tianlan sighed. "We're not the same, not the same." The phone suddenly rang. Li Tianlan took out his mobile phone and glanced at the number. His eyes softened slightly, and he directly pressed the answer button. He said with a smile, "What are you doing?" "Looking at the night view." Qin Weibai on the other end of the phone smiled softly and said softly, "The night view of Xianyuan City is very beautiful." Li Tianlan nodded. "I'll go back tomorrow. I'll accompany you then." Qin Weibai was silent for a moment and said softly, "I'm afraid not. Tianlan, I have to go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan, and come back in a few days." "The problem in South America?" Li Tianlan frowned slightly. Qin Weibai hesitated for a moment and nodded. "Yes, but it won't be long. I'll be back soon." Chapter 947. The phone was hung up in Li Tianlan's laughter. Xianyuan City was brightly lit at night. The streets were clean and tidy. The buildings were exquisite and magnificent. The grass was green, the flowers were in full bloom, and the trees were neat. The lights were on. It was as if the entire city had been draped in a colorful coat of light. The night here was not so noisy and bustling, but there was a kind of vitality from silence and beauty. Qin Weibai quietly looked at the scenes outside the window. She didn't say a word and just watched in silence. "Why do you suddenly want to go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan?" Horsewoman drove and suddenly asked in a low voice. "It's really beautiful." Qin Weibai looked out of the window and muttered to herself. Then she laughed at herself. "I'm afraid it's not mine." Horsewoman frowned and was a little puzzled. "I just saw Jiang Shangyu." Qin Weibai lowered her head and whispered. Horsewoman responded. She also saw it, although she didn't know what Jiang Shangyu talked to the boss. "When I met Jiang Shangyu, Tianlan also saw Jiang Shangyu." Qin Weibai's voice was deep and quiet. The black Rolls-Royce suddenly stopped in the middle of driving. Qin Weibai's body swayed and leaned forward slightly. Horsewoman's face changed dramatically. She suddenly looked back at Qin Weibai in disbelief. Qin Weibai was in Tiannan. Li Tianlan was in Yuzhou. The two of them saw Jiang Shangyu at the same time? How is this possible? Horsewoman subconsciously raised her voice, a little incredulous. "Nothing is impossible." Qin Weibai said indifferently. Just like now, I'm in Tiannan, but I'm also in the headquarters of the Lin clan. Horsewoman breathed violently. At that moment, she was completely stunned. Horsewoman frowned tightly and looked solemn. He and the palace master. Probably the same. It's hard to explain what's going on. But I can come back, so can he. Qin Weibai whispered. Horsewoman's brain was a little confused. After a while she understood what it meant. We have enemies. Horsewoman took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, an unimaginable enemy. There were 12 supermasters in the Samsara Palace. But the status of supermasters was also high and low. In reality, Fire Flaming Realm, one of the 12 supermasters, was naturally the most important, and he was once the only supermaster of the Invincible Realm. Next were the military counselor and the saint. And then there were the dukes and generals whose strength was only second to the saint and the military advisor. Instead, there were the knights whose strength might not be the best but were absolutely loyal. They knew the origin of the palace master from the very beginning. They also knew the inside story of the initial rise and rapid development of the Samsara Palace. The 12 supermasters were very high profile in the dark world. Lurk in the shadows, the saber of Zhongzhou State. A strategist who had absolute control over the economy. The Flourishing Age Fund, whose funds could sweep the world, certainly had Han Dongluo's ability, but it also had the foresight of the palace master. For more than a decade, they seized the opportunities again and again, and the Samsara Palace completed its accumulation at the fastest speed. The core of all this was the master of Samsara Palace. She was the master of Samsara Palace who knew what would happen before it happened. But now, the master of Samsara Palace was in an extremely bad state. She was almost dead. Jiang Shangyu appeared. Jiang Shangyu, who could predict the future like the master of Samsara Palace, appeared. Horsewoman couldn't imagine how powerful Jiang Shangyu had secretly cultivated. The fact that he could openly appear in front of Qin Weibai and Li Tianlan already showed his attitude. He was so confident that he could almost be fearless of everything. It's not that serious. Qin Weibai shook her head. His state is a little special. When I came back that year, my foster father spent a lot of effort to stabilize my injury. Then at the earliest time, I found myself. Jiang Shangyu was not so lucky. He has been in a bad state these years and can't do too many things. But, since he dared to appear in front of me, it means that he is indeed ready. It's a little troublesome, but it's not impossible to solve. Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she whispered. What was Jiang Shangyu's strength in his heyday? He broke through the peak of the Invincible Realm, and was only half a step away from the real Supreme. He was a person who really exerted the Heavenly King heart to the extreme. His willpower was indestructible, and his cultivation progressed rapidly. He could constantly make up for his shortcomings while making progress. He was not the same as the trash in Kunlun City, who also had the Heavenly King heart, but was not even in the Invincible Realm. In that era, Tianlan in his peak state could ignore everything. After Tianlan, Wang Tianzong managed to enter that realm, but it was not perfect. Then, Wang Shengxiao was the closest to that realm. After the father and son of the Wang family of Beihai, it was Jiang Shangyu, followed by Lin Yuxian of the Lin clan. If we talk about the combat capability in his heyday, Jiang Shangyu in his peak state is stronger than Mr. Lin and Li Guangtu. If we really want to compare, he is probably similar to Tribulation in his peak state and Wang Tianzong when he left Reki City. If it weren't for Ruthless, I wouldn't have been able to kill him and Wang Shengxiao. Well, at that time, Ruthless didn't break out with all his strength, but really self-destructed. It wanted to kill not only Wang Shengxiao and Jiang Shangyu, but also me. It destroyed everything. And then it became what it is now. Now, Horsewoman wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. He has the blood of Vermilion Bird and Black Tortoise that have evolved to the last stage in his body. At present, no one in the world can solve this level of poison. At most, they can barely suppress it. It is impossible for him to return to his peak state. Now Tianlan is only short of accumulation, and the final transformation from the real Supreme Realm. With Ruthless, he can't threaten Tianlan's safety. But since he dared to appear, it means that he should also have the ability to protect himself. Qin Weibai's voice gradually became a little low. I'm not worried about what will happen to Tianlan. Now, except for himself, there should be no one who can hurt him. Jiang Shangyu is a bit tricky, but there will be time to deal with him in the future. Her voice became softer and softer. What I'm worried about now is how to tell Tianlan about this. This should be told to His Majesty. Horsewoman was slightly shocked. How can I not tell him? Qin Weibai smiled bitterly. It's meaningless to hide such a serious thing. We must let Tianlan know the possible consequences of Jiang Shangyu and his current strength. How can he not tell him? Horsewoman fell silent. So, she was silent for a long time before hesitantly saying, Did you go back to the headquarters of the Lin clan to see the situation of the palace master? Yes and no. Qin Weibai shook her head, leaned against the seat and closed her eyes. I'm really tired, she whispered, staying with Tianlan. I'm very happy but also very tired. I know I am. We have the same thoughts, the same behavior, and even when we stand together, we have the same feeling. Can you understand? When I'm with me, it's not that I know what you're thinking. It's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking. My thoughts, senses, movements, everything is exactly the same, without each other. I am me. When I'm with her, at a close distance, I don't need to read the notebook that deepens the impression at all. I can directly read the pictures that I haven't experienced in that era, but I have experienced them from my mind. We are the same person. I firmly believe it, accept it, and even believe it. But it's still very tiring. When I see Tianlan, I can take it for granted that we are the same person. But when I'm with him, every time he looks at me, hugs me, and even presses on me, I feel that he is looking at another person. That person is me, but not me. This kind of feeling. Qin Weibai's voice was a little desperate. Do you understand? Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she shook her head slightly. In fact, whether I am me or not, in Tianlan's eyes, maybe it's different. In military counselor's heart, it's the same in Flaming Fire's heart, and it should be the same in his heart. So, Jiang Shangyu said that I'm an imposter. Oh, I really can't be an imposter. In fact, before this, we knew the existence of Jiang Shangyu. I'm just not sure who he is. I imagined the day when all this would be exposed, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. Jiang Shangyu is an enemy. His Majesty may not believe what he said. Horsewoman comforted with a pale face. I'm not sure if it's a lie, but things have come to this point. Maybe it's not a lie, but a lie. Qin Weibai muttered to herself. I'm really tired. You don't understand that kind of feeling. I love him as much as I love him. It's a completely consistent, strong feeling. But in his heart, I may be different. I don't want to go on like this. She whispered. Every time I see myself in the Lin clan, I will firmly believe that we are the same person. So I want to go back and see my own state. In any case, at the right time, I will tell Tianlan everything. I'm his woman, not my substitute. I want him to accept the real me. Nothing else. It's hard to understand. Horsewoman was silent for a long time before she said frankly, I can understand your incomprehension. Qin Weibai smiled. That's why I feel so tired. Horsewoman hesitated. What if His Majesty doesn't accept your identity? If he thinks you are not you like Flaming Fire, what will you do then? There's no way. Qin Weibai's eyes were calm and a little empty. With Jiang Shangyu's existence, this seemingly flawless secret will be revealed sooner or later. Tianlan will know it sooner or later. The only difference is whether I tell him or someone else tells him. It's better to get the pain over with. She whispered. When I come back from the Lin clan, I will confess everything to him. Even. The light outside the window shone on her face. That exquisite and perfect dreamy face was pale, and almost transparent. She shook her head hard and whispered, even if it's my end. Chapter 948. In the dead of night, Li Tianlan sat on the rooftop of the sanatorium, and enjoyed the breeze. Once again, Wuqing turned into Li Tianlan and sat with him. The vast and majestic sword energy fluctuated with its appearance. The dense sword energy spread from the rooftop, and eventually covered the whole sanatorium. This sword chi was so perfect and flawless that it didn't even have a single flaw. Instead, it looked like an airtight domain. Li Tianlan reached out his hand and poked the sword energy around him in boredom. The sword energy was like a transparent cover. As he stretched his fingers forward, the sword energy broke one after another like a cover. The small holes appeared one after another, and were silently patched by Wuqing. Then he poked it again and patched it again slowly. A man and a sword played the game out of boredom. Eventually, the whole sanatorium was filled with surging sword light. "Your Majesty!" A voice suddenly rang out at the door of the rooftop. Saint walked over with a food box and a pot of wine. He said helplessly, "What are you doing?" Li Tianlan answered blankly, as if he couldn't react. Wuqing silently withdrew the domain of sword energy and turned it into a cloak. He put it on Li Tianlan to block the cold wind. Saint shook his head with a bitter smile. He had been pursuing swordsmanship all his life. He was the sword master of Mount Shu. Later, he became a saint. He still learned Dongqing Huangtu's swordsmanship, which was also Li Tianlan's swordsmanship. Now that he had entered the invincible realm, his perception of swordsmanship had reached the extreme. He had fallen asleep, but Li Tianlan and Wuqing's game seemed to be silent. However, the surging sword energy was like a dazzling light to Saint, easily dispelling all his sleepiness. It was his boss who disturbed his dreams. What else could he do? He could only pack up and rush over. "Can't sleep." Saint walked to Li Tianlan and sat down beside him. He opened the food box. There was only a stack of spiced beef in the food box. It was simple, but it was enough. There were 2 empty cups beside the beef. Saint took out the cups, handed one to Li Tianlan, and poured wine for him. The wine was mellow and slightly warm. "Last time I went back to Tiannan, I asked for a batch of good wine from Senior Yu. The Huadia wine he made is very famous even in the Hidden Dragon Sea Council," Saint said with a smile. Li Tianlan's eyes were in a trance. He took a sip of wine and became more and more silent. "His Majesty can't sleep? Is there something on your mind?" Saint asked again. I'm fine. It's just, I don't know what you're thinking." Li Tianlan was somewhat absent-minded. He really didn't know what he was thinking, but his mind was a little chaotic, and he didn't feel sleepy at all. He grabbed a piece of beef with sauce and put it into his mouth. He shook his head hard and took another sip of wine. "I'm thinking about a lot of things," he said softly. "The future of Emperor Dong's palace, my future. I miss the Li family, my grandpa, the carefree life of the Wang family of Beihai and the Lin clan, my own life experience, a lot of things. It's a mess, or maybe I don't think about anything." "Your Majesty is thinking about the Dongqing clan?" Saint asked with a smile after a moment of silence. Maybe Li Tianlan nodded. "Parents. Mom and Dad. This word is very strange." He gulped down the wine and shook his head slightly. There were some things that were completely different from saying it out loud. Li Shi, who sobered up, told his life experience in the clearest manner as the person involved. It was a very strange feeling. For a long time he didn't quite understand why the Dongqing clan would give him unconditionally. He didn't understand why the giant group made plans with him as the core. He didn't understand why Dongqing Wudi and Bai Qingqian accepted Qin Weibai and Wang Yuetong so easily. He didn't understand why Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost turned against each other and became enemies. He didn't understand why Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost fell out and became enemies. He slowly realized something. And everything Li Shi said was the answer to all his incomprehensible questions. Li Tianlan's heart was a little chaotic, but he couldn't tell what specific emotion it was. It was a very subtle psychological activity, so subtle that he didn't even form any specific emotion or feeling. He fought with Gu Xingyun, attended the meeting of the parliament, watched the changes in Beijiang, listened to Lin Fengting talk about the origin of murderous weapons, and watched Jiang Shangyu perform to his heart's content. Today was undoubtedly very lively, and he lived a fulfilling life. When everything was over and he was alone, Li Tianlan's mind became a little complicated. "I thought your Majesty was worried about the next decisive battle in Beihai." Saint smiled. Li Tianlan shook his head and didn't speak. He really didn't think about it. Even if he knew the existence of Wuyo, no matter whether it was self-confidence or brainlessness, Li Tianlan's heart was firm. He was sure that he was invincible now, and he didn't care who his opponent was. Subtle footsteps sounded from behind the two of them, and they didn't hide it. Li Tianlan and Saint turned back at the same time. Li Shi, who was dressed neatly and looked a little pale, appeared at the door of the rooftop. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. "Are you going out?" he asked directly. Li Shi nodded and whispered, "I will come back before I go to Xianyuan City tomorrow." Li Tianlan nodded and asked subconsciously, "Where are we going?" Li Shi shook her head and didn't say much. She had a free identity, and from tomorrow on a new life. If this night was a farewell to the past, then Li Shi always felt that she should say thank you to some people. Li Tianlan took a deep look at her, and didn't ask any more questions. He just said, "Be careful on the way. Go early and come back early." Li Shi said yes and turned to leave. Saint watched her back gradually disappear, then shook his head and whispered, "It's so late, Your Majesty. Where did she say she was going?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while, then said softly, "I don't know." At the same time, Tiannan, Xianyuan City. In an exquisite hotel suite in the city center, Jiang Shangyu opened the door and saw himself standing outside the door. "I just received the news." Without any pleasantries, Jiang Shangyu said, "Qin Weibai has left Tiannan." There was an inexplicable aura surging in the room. The space was slightly distorted. A blurry and hazy cloud and starlight completely enveloped his body. He became His Majesty again. It should be the problem of the Jiang family of South America. After all, she is the patriarch of the Lin clan. His Majesty said, not surprised at all. "It's a pity. If she stayed in Xianyuan City." Jiang Shangyu shook his head slightly. Everyone was afraid of the fallen master of Samsara Palace, but in terms of force, no one would be afraid of Qin Weibai. Many people were afraid of His Majesty, but no one was afraid of Jiang Shangyu. Jiang Shangyu was too young to become a real expert of the invincible realm. His Majesty was different. His physical strength was fixed. In terms of strength, what he needed was not progress, but recovery. What was more, Qin Weibai basically knew nothing about martial arts. If he could control him, Li Tianlan wouldn't be able to hold on to Li Qingcheng. How can it be so simple? His Majesty shook his head, was silent for a while and asked, "How's Dad?" "There's no problem," Jiang Shangyu said. "The pension will be in place within 3 days. During this time, Dad will talk to some people in Beijiang and control them so that there won't be any accidents. In other words, control Beijiang so that there won't be any accidents." 3 days, His Majesty whispered to himself, nodded and said, "Then 3 days later I'll fight Li Tianlan." Jiang Shangyu raised his eyebrows slightly. "Then I'll start to sleep tomorrow." His Majesty nodded and said slowly, "Let's sleep longer this time. 3 days later, I'll fight Li Tianlan and at the same time, it will officially start the final battle in Beihai and the chaos in East Island. In order to prevent accidents, don't stop sleeping." "There's not enough nutrient solution." Jiang Shangyu frowned slightly. "I know, so I'll solve everything as soon as possible." His Majesty smiled. "If everything goes well, when I wake up, Li Tianlan should have died. He refused to be my friend, so I'll let him know how serious the consequences of his refusal will be." Jiang Shangyu shrugged. "Be careful. I don't think Li Tianlan is so simple now. That's how I feel." "Of course I know." His Majesty's voice was calm. "That's why we need this final battle as a test." He took out his mobile phone, opened the address book, and directly dialed Li Guangtu's number. The phone rang twice, and then it was picked up. Li Guangtu's deep voice sounded a little dignified. "What's the matter?" "Don't be nervous." His Majesty smiled. "Nothing has changed. I'm just telling you a sudden decision." Li Guangtu was silent for a moment. On the other end of the phone he seemed to look at the time, and then his voice became a little irritated. "Say it. 3 days later, I'll challenge Li Tianlan." His Majesty's voice was calm and firm. Li Guangtu suddenly fell silent. He seemed to be trying hard to digest the news. After a while he asked, "Why?" "It doesn't matter." His Majesty's voice was calm. "Well, it doesn't matter," Li Guangtu repeated, and his voice became lower and lower. "So you want me to cooperate with you?" The original plan was to cooperate with His Majesty in the final battle in Beihai, sneak attack Li Tianlan, and kill him with one blow. But His Majesty, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly decided to come out. Didn't he need to consider the final battle in Beihai? No, there's no need. His Majesty said blandly. I'll test his strength first. Believe me, for now, I'm one of the people who knows Li Tianlan, Wuqing, and the 13th floor the best. Only when I make a move can I determine his current state. This final battle will attract everyone's attention. Taking advantage of this opportunity, my friends and I will complete the final infiltration in these 3 days. Your Highness, if there's nothing else, we can probably enter Beihai tomorrow to make the early preparations. Li Guangta chuckled and said in a strange tone. Attract everyone's attention? Are you sure that the challenge won't be regarded as a clown, and then completely ignored? No, Jiang Shangyu said softly. In this era, no one dares to ignore me, including Li Tianlan. Chapter 949. At dawn, Dongqing Wudi opened his eyes and found that the warm, soft and fragrant body beside him seemed to have left for a long time. Half of the quilt had become cold, just like the feeling in the past many years. He was in a trance for a while, as if he was not sure whether it was reality or a dream. After more than 10 seconds, he laughed at himself, sat up slowly, put on his clothes and walked out of the room. The lights were on in the corridor of the villa outside the door. Because it was on the 4th floor, in a more private space, the small reception area at the corner at the end of the corridor had been transformed into a small kitchen. Dongqing Wudi sniffed and his expression became softer. Bai Qingqian, who got up early, was frying eggs in the small kitchen. Beside her was cooked porridge and a few strangely shaped deep-fried pancakes that had been completed. Hungry, Dongqing Wudi walked to the kitchen and looked at his wife. He laughed and said, If I wait a little longer, Sister Wu will probably get up. Why did you cook in person today? I made breakfast for both of us. Bai Qingqian, who was wearing an apron, put the fried eggs on the plate and whispered, I have a flight this afternoon. Dongqing Wudi froze for a moment and then fell silent. Bai Qingqian was the speaker of Liaodong. Naturally, she could not stay in Yuzhou. During this time, she had been holding meetings in Yuzhou. There was less than a year before the election, and all aspects were sensitive. Today, she would go to the Hidden Dragon Sea to attend a speakers' conference of Zhongzhou State, which was also the highlight of this series of meetings, or even the finale. This meeting could basically determine some things that all parties had been psychologically prepared for, and even determine Bai Qingqian's new position after the election. Then she would rush back to Liaodong overnight. The next time the couple would meet would probably be the election in October next year. I may not have time to see you off. It depends on the situation. I'll try my best to make time. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a moment and whispered. No need. Bai Qingqian scooped 2 bowls of porridge and placed some delicate and delicious side dishes on the table. You do what you need to do. I'll try my best to come back during the Spring Festival. Dongqing Wudi gave a wry smile and shook his head. The Spring Festival was a holiday for ordinary people, but for them, it was impossible for them to be idle at all, especially in the year before the general election. It was almost impossible for the speakers to leave their posts. Even if Bai Qingqian could really come back, Dongqing Wudi would be too busy during the Spring Festival. He had to go to various places in Zhongzhou State on behalf of the army headquarters to pay New Year's greetings to the soldiers and inspect their work. Can't bear to part with it. Bai Qingqian sat down, raised her eyebrows and said with a faint smile, At most, I can return to Yuzhou in a year. Can't you wait a year? How is this a year? Dongqing Wudi sighed and frowned. He no longer had the demeanor of a god of massacre. I've waited for more than 20 years before I tasted the sweetness. Bai Qingqian's face turned red. She angrily picked up her chopsticks and knocked Dongqing Wudi on the head, saying bitterly, You're talking nonsense. It's the truth. Dongqing Wudi felt a little helpless. Bai Qingqian held her chopsticks, and her face became redder. The relationship between them had been stiff for more than 20 years, and they almost became enemies. Although their relationship had eased a little in recent years, as a husband and wife, they had only recently started to sleep together. Dongqing Wudi was reluctant to leave, and Bai Qingqian naturally didn't want to leave. But she had responsibilities. What else could she do but leave? She lowered her head and took a sip of porridge. She said calmly, Isn't the Black Dragon Army in Longjiang? Yes. Dongqing Wudi nodded subconsciously. Bai Qingqian glared at him. I can't come back during the Spring Festival. Can't you inspect the northeast? Dongqing Wudi suddenly came to his senses. He giggled and nodded. Yes, you're right. It's settled. I'll inspect your place during the Spring Festival. Bai Qingqian snorted softly, drank the porridge and asked casually. After the election, your part-time job should be removed, right? Yes. Dongqing Wudi nodded and said. It's not necessarily after the election. It could be before. He was the executive minister of the army headquarters, and his part-time job was the commander of the Border Control Corps. In the entire army headquarters, the Border Control Corps occupied a very important corps position. The commander's rank of marshal was enough to show the importance that Zhongzhou state attached to the Border Control Corps. After Di Jiang resigned, Dongqing Wudi had been holding this position for more than 2 years, which was a miracle. Before and after the election, Dongqing Wudi had to step down from this position. The academics, the Southeast Group, and the Prince Group were all reluctant to let Dongqing Wudi continue to hold this position. Dongqing Wudi's prestige was too high, especially in the Border Control Corps. He had been the commander for more than 20 years, and he was the soul and core of hundreds of thousands of troops in the Border Control Corps. Although he was now the commander, as long as he was still in the Border Control Corps, even if he was just a soldier, as long as he was there would be no room for others to intervene in the Border Control Corps. Other groups would rather let a person from the giant group take control of the Border Control Corps than see Dongqing Wudi continue to occupy this position, especially the Southeast Group. This position was originally traded from the Dongqing clan with great difficulty, and finally given away. The grievance and helplessness were indescribable. Naturally, they wanted to regain some of the right to speak in the Border Control Corps. This position had now become an important bargaining chip for the giant group to trade with all parties in the election, and the benefits that could be traded had even exceeded expectations. What about the successor? Bai Qingqian whispered. Is it the Eagle King of the Li family, or Thunder God? This issue was also the focus of many people's attention, and it could be said to be the most sensitive focus before and after the election. Dongqing Wudi took a deep breath and frowned. After a while he shook his head and said, It's hard to say now. The Eagle King has enough qualifications, but some people are talking about his lack of experience in leading troops for so many years. Thunder God's qualifications are a little worse, and he's not even a general. In short, there are obstacles in front of both of them. In this respect, although we cooperate with the Southeast also has its own opinion. At the end of the day, they're not really against the Eagle King or Thunder God. Either of them is fine. What they want is some other positions in the Border Control Corps after the two of them go up. So we can push any one of them up now, and then it's nothing more than a deal. The reason why we haven't issued this appointment now is that we haven't reached a new balance. To be honest, we can give up some positions, but we don't want to give too many. The current situation is very simple. Whether it's the Eagle King or Thunder God, we have to give up at least a third of the Border Control Corps. We even have to give up nearly half of the right to speak. The price is too high. Moreover, the Border Control Corps has a special status and duties. Such a deal is not a good thing for the Corps. Bai Qingqian blinked her eyes and whispered, So what you said to Big Brother is true? Dongqing Wudi was stunned for a moment before he remembered what he had said to Bai Qingzhao before. He hesitated and nodded, saying, I've also communicated with the two old masters about this matter, but no decision has been made yet. Dongqing Wudi paused and said thoughtfully, Now the most important thing is the result of the final battle in Beihai. If Tianlan's performance is strong enough, the Border Control Corps will have the perfect candidate. The Border Control Corps was too big. In a sense, it could almost be said to be the most important large-scale integrated army in Zhongzhou state. It was the only one. For such a behemoth, there were all kinds of problems with the Eagle King or Thunder God. Emperor Dong's palace was extremely powerful now, so such problems could not be an obstacle. But if they wanted to achieve their goal, the giant group also needed to pay some price. Under such circumstances, the most correct approach for the giant group was to bypass the Eagle King and Thunder God, and directly push forward a person who was perfect and strong in all aspects. He was so strong that once the giant group pushed forward this candidate, no one could find a reason to object. As long as he was pushed forward, everyone would take it for granted that he was the new commander of the Border Control Corps. He was the most suitable and even irreplaceable. Such a person was hard to find. The most suitable meant that there was only one. Compared with the major groups in Zhongzhou State, there was only one such person. It was hard to find. But it didn't mean that the giant group didn't have one. Dongqing Wudi had always had such a trump card in his hand, but he had been hesitating whether to play it or not. When this card was played, no one would object, and no one was qualified to object. It also meant that in the transfer of the supreme power of the Border Control Corps, the price that the giant group had to pay to other groups was much smaller. But if this card was played, the giant group might also lose another trump card, which would also bring some trouble. So Dongqing Wudi needed some new situations. The situation formed after the final battle in Beihai was undoubtedly a good entry point. But the premise was that the situation after the final battle was in line with expectations. Tianlan. Bai Qingqian's eyes were a little worried. Someone outside has already called him His Majesty. Is he really invincible? Is he really as rumored? The final battle in Beihai was the key point and the beginning of the Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan was bound to be involved in it. This was a step he had to take. Bai Qingqian couldn't stop it, and she didn't want to, but she had never let go of the worry in her heart. It was said that there were several invincible realm experts involved in the final battle, and none of them would be on the side of Beihai. Li Tianlan hadn't entered the invincible realm yet. Don't worry. Dongqing Wudi was silent for a while and said with a smile, Tianlan has grown to this point. The worst result can guarantee that he can retreat from the final battle unscathed. Bai Qingqian nodded with a heavy heart. Just as she was about to say something, a middle-aged woman who looked to be in her early 50s had already walked up quietly. Bai Qingqian looked back and was a little surprised. She whispered, Nanny Wu, what's the matter? Speaker, I was just about to cook when I saw someone standing outside. She just stood there motionless. I asked the minister's guards, and they said that she had been standing there in the middle of the night. The guards asked her and said that she wanted to see you, but she didn't allow anyone to disturb your rest. Ah, she has been standing there for several hours. Bai Qingqian stood up in a daze and asked curiously, Who is it? I don't know. I asked her who she was, but she didn't tell me. Nanny Wu shook her head. Bai Qingqian frowned and looked at Dongqing Wudi. They got up and went downstairs at the same time, and turned on the manor surveillance in the living room. In the cold morning wind, a somewhat thin figure appeared on the screen. Quiet, gentle, beautiful, and elegant. Bai Qingqian glanced at her. Her first feeling was that she didn't know her, but then she felt a little familiar. She thought for a long time, then slightly raised her eyebrows and said in surprise, Li Shi. Dongqing Wudi nodded and whispered, It seems to be true. This chapter is on the 9th. Chapter 950. Although it was a little strange that Li Shi suddenly appeared here, for Dongqing Wudi and his wife, she was not an uninvited guest with bad intentions. After the surprise, Bai Qingqian put on a coat and walked quickly to the door. At the same time, she asked Nanny Wu to make tea. Li Shi stood quietly at the door. Perhaps because it had been a long time, her body was stained with a lot of morning dew. She looked a little hazy and colder. In the dark corners around the manor, gazes fell on her, intentionally or unintentionally. They observed her every move without malice or kindness. As the third most powerful person in Zhongzhou State, Dongqing Wudi's guards were undoubtedly the best in Zhongzhou State. 8 guards, in 2 shifts, protected Dongqing Wudi 24 hours a day. The 8 guards were all experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm from the Border Control Corps. Their courage and professionalism were beyond doubt. They left the Border Control Corps and entered the shadow sect of Zhongzhou State. What they learned was the sword formations passed down from the Li family's Zhuanyuantai. There were about 4 or 5 people in a group, and each group was a small sword formation. The sword formation was not very aggressive, but it was unparalleled in defense. Hundreds of years ago, after the ancestor of the Li family became the god of war of Zhongzhou State, he once used the 30-meter mortal world domain of the Jiang family of South America, which was known as the best defense in the world, to create two sets of protective sword formations with slightly different functions. It became a unique skill that the bodyguards of the hidden dragon sea practiced all the time. In the following hundreds of years, the successive patriarchs of the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai would fine-tune the sword formations, and the various combinations of the sword formations became more and more sophisticated. As far as the guards around Dongqing Wudi were concerned, the sword formation, composed of 4 experts at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, might not be a match for an expert of the invincible realm, but an ordinary expert of the invincible realm could not break the sword formation in a short time. Li Shi also knew this nameless protective sword formation. Every god of war of Zhongzhou State would fine-tune the sword formation. In the past 20 years, Kunlun City was undoubtedly responsible for this work. Kunlun City was responsible for it. It was not Gu Xingyan who was in charge. In fact, in the final analysis, Gu Xingyun, who had not reached the peak of the invincible realm, and was barely close to this realm, could not make any fine-tuning suggestions for this sword formation. This work had always been done by Li Shi, who had already reached the peak of the invincible realm. Li Shi naturally knew the sword formation very well. At this time, she was standing in the most convenient place for the guards to observe. Her every move was full of sincerity. So after a short exchange, the guards hesitated and did not choose to expel her. The black car came from the depths of the manor. Mad One Gad 2. Li Shi's eyebrows moved slightly. Before the car came to a complete stop, Bai Qingqian had already opened the door and walked over with almost a trot. "Welcome to the Bai family, Ms. Li Shi." Bai Qingqian's smile was impeccable, gentle, but her eyes looking at Li Shi were somewhat complicated that was difficult to hide. She put another coat of her own in her hand on Li Shi, who was wearing very thin clothes, and whispered, "I should have called in advance. As long as you come, it doesn't matter how late you are." The corner of Li Shi's mouth moved. It seemed that she wanted to say something, but she couldn't say it for a while. Draped in a warm coat, her stiff body seemed to gradually warm up. She glanced over by Qingqian and looked at Dongqing Wudi, who came out of the driver's seat. Dongqing Wudi nodded with a smile and said nothing. Li Shi bowed slightly. Her movements were slow, but they became bigger and bigger. Finally, she turned from a slight bow into a deep bow. It was extremely quiet. Bai Qingqian was a little overwhelmed. She subconsciously reached out to hold Li Shi, feeling a little confused. She knew Li Shi, but she didn't know her at all. In her memory, they met very few times, when they were very young many years ago. As the most outstanding young women of that era, Xia Ji, who was by Wang Tianzong's side, Li Shi, who was by Li Guangtu's side, and Bai Qingqian, who was by Dongqing Wudi's side, each of them had their own elegance. When they met occasionally, they just nodded to each other as a greeting. She still remembered that when Dongqing Wudi was young, he once fought with Li Guangtu, and Dongqing Wudi suffered a little loss. Since then, Bai Qingqian seemed to be displeased with Li Guangtu and Li Shi. Bai Qingqian's mind was in a mess for a moment, and her memories flew farther and farther. Li Shi's somewhat hoarse and dry voice sounded. "I've thought about it for a long time," she said quietly. "Maybe you won't accept it, but in any case, I should say thank you to you. Thank you for taking care of Rushi for so many years and taking good care of her. Thank you." Even if most of the news was blocked in Kunlun City, she could still roughly know about Dongqing Rushi's situation in a few meetings with Xian Xuanzi. After all, Dongqing Rushi was her biological daughter, and Li Shi had always kept an eye on her. The baby, who should have been the legitimate grandson of the Dongqing clan, was given to Li Honghe by Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi. The girl, who should have been the down-and-out princess of the Li family, was given to the Dongqing clan, and became the daughter of the Dongqing clan. Bai Qingqian, who just saw her son in a hurry, almost completely collapsed. The loving couple, the filial daughter-in-law, all the beautiful relationship was completely broken at that moment. Mad One Gad 2. Bai Qingqian and the Dongqing clan almost completely broke up, but after the initial time, Bai Qingqian, who couldn't find her son, began to gradually pay attention to Dongqing Rushi. She hadn't returned to the Dongqing clan in these years, but she still showed a mother's care and love for Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Rushi had been in a coma for 2 years. But 2 years ago, in the more than 20 years before that, she never felt that her mother, Bai Qingqian, didn't like her. With this alone, Li Shi could be sure of Bai Qingqian's attitude toward Dongqing Rushi over the years. Dongqing Rushi's current situation was not very good. But Li Shi couldn't not remember the kindness of raising her for so many years. Bai Qingqian's face changed slightly and she didn't speak. Don't get me wrong. Li Shi whispered. I have no intention of robbing Rushi from you. She will always be your daughter. I don't mean that. Bai Qingqian waved her hand a little awkwardly, then pulled Li Shi and laughed. It's a little cold. Come on, let's go in and talk. Li Shi was pulled into the car by Bai Qingqian. The car started slowly. Dongqing Wudi, who was driving in person, kept looking at Li Shi through the rearview mirror. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Bai Qingqian seemed to know what her husband was thinking. She hesitated for a moment and said softly, I heard that you saw Tianlan as soon as you woke up? Yes. Li Shi nodded. Bai Qingqian glanced at Dongqing Wudi, who was driving in front, and then seemed to make up her mind. She said cautiously, What did you talk about? As soon as she finished speaking, she opened her mouth again and said with a forced smile, Of course, if it's something we shouldn't know. You are his parents. Li Shi whispered. There is nothing we shouldn't know. His Majesty thinks so too. Parents. This simplest and most common word seemed to shatter all the defenses in Bai Qingqian's heart in an instant. Her body was stiff in the seat, and her face was pale. Li Shi lowered her eyebrows and whispered. We talked about his and Rushi's life experiences. I told him everything I should tell him. Chapter 951. The car was moving slowly in the manor. Inside the car, there was a deathly silence that was almost frozen. Bai Qingqian looked at Li Shi's calm face in a daze and couldn't say a word for a long time. Li Tianlan's origin. This might be the only problem she worried and even feared in recent years. There was no way to describe her inner feelings. In recent years, Li Tianlan and the Dongqing clan were getting closer and closer. Bai Qingqian felt very happy, but also a little scared. She didn't know how to face the child who was gradually returning, and she didn't dare to think about how he would react after knowing his origin. Complain? Resentment? Indifference? Or something else? She thought about this question again and again. Seeing that Li Tianlan was getting closer and closer to the answer, she looked forward to the arrival of this day, and at the same time, she was afraid of this day. She knew that Li Tianlan had noticed something. Maybe it was the clues in the past years, or the undisguised preference of the Dongqing clan, and the Bai clan for him that made him notice something. But Li Tianlan didn't say it, and even occasionally showed an attitude of refusing this topic. But in addition, his attitude toward the Dongqing clan had not changed. He called Dongqing Wudi minister and called her aunt. He was polite and respectful, but there was no obvious alienation. Bai Qingqian felt a little distressed, but her heart gradually settled down. She thought that Li Tianlan might not be able to accept these things for a while. She thought that the time was not ripe enough, so the truth was clearly in front of them, but both sides turned a blind eye to it. Maybe in a few years or a few more years, she would slowly tell Li Tianlan the truth in the most peaceful way, but Bai Qingqian did not expect that Li Shi would directly pierce through this layer of window paper that almost didn't exist but had great significance. Dongqing Wudi held the steering wheel tightly and smiled silently. He couldn't blame Li Shi for anything, and Li Shi had no obligation to keep it secret for them. Besides, it seemed that there was nothing to keep secret. Bai Qingqian's confused and wandering voice sounded after a while. Oh well, did he say anything? No. Li Shi shook her head. He knew about this a long time ago. So, Bai Qingqian's body trembled slightly. He still won't forgive us? No. Li Shi shook her head and thought about the conversation with Li Tianlan. He didn't hate you, so there was no forgiveness. He said that neither the Li family nor the Dongqing clan had done anything wrong to him. He said that the current situation was actually very good, and there was no need to deliberately explain anything. Li Shi was silent for a while and chuckled. He is His Majesty now. Perhaps he is still very young in his 20s, and perhaps in your eyes he is still a child. But now he is indeed one of the most powerful people in the world, and even the most powerful one. He stands at the peak of personal force. With the rapid development of Emperor Dong's palace, he also has unimaginable power and wealth. Now he can almost do whatever he wants. As long as he wants, there is nothing that he can't do or get. If he had nothing when he first appeared in Huading a few years ago, maybe we would have told him the truth, and he would have been resentful, unable to accept it, and hysterical. But now he has almost everything. What he has today is given to him by the Dongqing clan and the Li family. Standing at his height, what else can he not accept? He didn't explain it, but it doesn't mean that he didn't know it. He knew it, and was still willing to deal with the Dongqing clan, which shows that he has let it go. He didn't say it because he was too lazy to entangle himself in it. At the same time, he didn't want to make you feel guilty. The way things are now is actually very good. He doesn't call you mom and dad for now, but that doesn't mean he's not their son. Li Shi suddenly thought of something and asked, "Do you know why he went to Kunlun City to bring me back?" "Why?" Dongqing Wudi asked subconsciously. "Not because I might recover my strength," Li Shi said slowly. "It was my own choice to join Emperor Dong's palace. He promised to help me fight with Gu Xingyun just because he said that I was also his mother." Li Shi was silent for a while, and smiled with some complexity. "Mother-in-law is also a mother, right? So thank you very much. Thank you for helping me take care of Rushi for so many years." Later, I learned that the Dongqing clan did a lot of things secretly after the collapse of the Li family. If you hadn't secretly taken action, the Li family's fate might have been worse. If you hadn't, Rushi would probably not have survived if... Her voice gradually lowered, and she was lost in thought. More than 20 years ago, the Dongqing clan was also the most influential wealthy family in Zhongzhou state. At that time, Dongqing Hongguang was still the standing deputy minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou state, and one of the directors of the Zhongzhou state parliament. Although there was an extra word, there was no standing minister in Zhongzhou state at that time. So Dongqing Hongguang's position at that time was equivalent to Dongqing Wudi's current position. He ranked third among the directors of the parliament, deeply rooted and powerful. The collapse of the Li family was too sudden. The Southeast group was in turmoil, and the Gu family struggled to rise under great pressure. The Dongqing clan took action and easily smoothed out some things secretly, and concealed some truths. For example, Dongqing Rushi and Li Tianlan. For so many years, Gu Xingyun didn't even know about it. He always thought that Li Shi and Li Guangtu's daughter was dead. Maybe he was not sure about Li Tianlan's origin until now. If there was no Dongqing clan, things would not be like this at all. Even the one Li Shi killed might really be Dongqing Rushi. How could there be the current story? Don't think that they are good people. They are also selfish. Bai Qingqian said coldly and gave Dongqing Wudi a hard look. Although the relationship between husband and wife had been eased, when it came to this topic, her inner resentment and grievance suddenly surged up. She found Dongqing Wudi unpleasant no matter how she looked at him. Dongqing Wudi coughed and drove the car. Because of his guilty conscience, the car was as slow as a turtle crawling. In the final analysis, what happened that year was actually a transaction, purely without any other purpose. The development of the Dongqing clan had already reached a bottleneck, or the peak that they could reach. After the peak, it was bound to be a stage of continuous decline. It could be said that Dongqing Hongguang had put in a lot of effort to become the de facto leader of the army headquarters. But the giant group was different from other groups. It was a loose group that tended to be an alliance. Its internal cohesion was seriously insufficient. Many times, before it did anything to the outside world, it had already felt the internal constraints. The giant group was naturally dominated by the wealthy families of Zhongzhou state. The Dongqing, Bai, and Zhou families were the pillars. But other wealthy families had various relationships with other groups. In terms of scale, the giant group was the first among the 6 groups, but it almost never made the same voice. Dongqing Hongguang was not sure how far the Dongqing clan would develop after his retirement. At that time, the 3 pillars of the giant group were urgently seeking changes, but they could not find any opportunities at all. The biggest problem was that there were no real experts in the Dongqing clan, the first wealthy family in the military. At that time, the peak force of Zhongzhou state was also the peak force of the dark world. It had been so for hundreds of years. The Li family and the Wang family of Beihai had always been the peak force of individual forces in Zhongzhou state. Even if the Dongqing clan had cultivated a great force like Jade Pool, It could not guarantee that there would be an invincible realm expert in every generation. Even if someone was lucky enough to enter the invincible realm, he was still a little brother in front of the Li family and Beihai. Individual force often did not mean anything, but more often than not, it clearly represented something. The position of the state-protecting war god could already explain some problems. This position represented great power, but at the same time, it also represented extreme martial strength. Absolute personal strength represented absolute prestige. Today's Wang family of Beihai was a behemoth that slowly transformed into shape after the personal strength reached its peak. A real peak invincible realm expert meant strength in countless disputes. Confidence was related to a lot of invisible prestige, interests, diplomatic relations, and execution power. If the Dongqing clan had an invincible realm expert who could compete with the Li family and Beihai, the entire Dongqing clan, and even the giant group would go further, and become a super large group that could really be on an equal footing with the Southeast group. The collapse of the Li family gave the Dongqing clan an opportunity. Li Honghe needed to preserve the last strength of the Li family as another trump card. And the Dongqing clan was eager to seize this opportunity to cultivate a real top expert. Jade Pool could not cultivate such an expert. The Li family was the most suitable candidate. So the deal was reached the moment the two sides met. The grandson of the Dongqing clan became the grandson of Li Honghe, and became Li Tianlan. The granddaughter of the Li family became the granddaughter of the Dongqing clan, and became Dongqing Rushi. In order to integrate in the future, the two sides used the oldest but often the most effective way: marriage. From that moment on, the baby boy and the baby boy, who were born on the same day in the same year, month, and year, had been tied up. Li Honghe had no reservations about Li Tianlan. He taught him all the inheritance of the Li family and tried his best to cultivate him. The Dongqing clan was also generous to Dongqing Rushi. Both sides regarded the two children as their own, waiting for them to grow up and get married smoothly. At that time, the power of the Li family would become the power of the Dongqing clan. And the power of the Dongqing clan would also be the cornerstone of the Li family's rise again. From that moment on, the Dongqing clan and the Li family had put their futures on the two children. This was a deal. Up to now, this deal had deviated a little because of various factors, but in general, the general direction had not changed. The Li family rose again. With the rise of the Li family and the establishment of Emperor Dong's palace, the new group would also become an important turning point for the three pillars of the giant group to seek change. Among them, Bai Qingqian, who had lost her son, and Li Tianlan, who had suffered a lot since childhood, might have suffered a lot. Li Tianlan had gained something. What about Bai Qingqian? Li Shi looked at Bai Qingqian in a daze. After a long time, she reached out, held her hand and whispered, "Thank you." Bai Qingqian shook her head. "I don't need to thank you. After all, in my heart, Rushi is also my daughter." She looked straight at Li Shi and said in a pleading voice, "If I really want to join Emperor Dong's palace, my only request is that you can help me take care of my son." Just like what he said. Li Shi said softly, "He is also my son." A son-in-law was naturally a son. Bai Qingqian bit her lip and nodded hard. "If I can, I really want to wait for Moon God to wake up, and then watch them get married and watch their children." Li Shi's voice was a little faint. "Moon God?" Bai Qingqian asked. "Ah." Li Shi smiled. "This is the name that Li Guangtu and I gave her before she was born, Li Yueshan, but the name Rushi is also very good." "Name?" Bai Qingqian's eyes were in a trance. "Tianlan also has a name, right?" Li Shi asked tentatively. Almost every parent would choose a name for their child before they were born. "Yes." Li Shi smiled bitterly. She and Dongqing Wudi naturally gave Li Tianlan a name, but things had developed to this point. That name was almost meaningless. Li Tianlan was Li Tianlan after all. Dongqing Wudi sighed, and his eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time he stopped the car and whispered, "We also gave him a name at that time." At that time, Qingqian was just 4 months pregnant. Shaking his head, Dongqing Wudi said, "His name is Dongqing Huangtu." Chapter 952. Li Shi left quietly and did not bring any extra trouble when she came back. At 11 o'clock in the morning, Li Shi, who had disappeared for a night, came back again. "Li Qingqing, who looked obviously restless, suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Li Tianlan, who was accompanying Li Qingqing rather than Li Qingqing, stood up. He asked, "Are you all right?" "Yes." Li Shi glanced at him with soft eyes. "Thank you." Li Tianlan looked up at his watch and shook his head. "The route has been determined. We will return to Tiannan at 2:30 p.m. Tomorrow, Emperor Dong's palace will officially announce to the public that we will welcome the third deputy palace lord of Emperor Dong's palace." Li Shi was silent for a while and nodded slightly. "Okay, Your Majesty." Li Tianlan turned his head and glanced at Lin Yuxian, who was sitting next to Li Qingqing. Lin Yuxian noticed his gaze but ignored it. Obviously, he didn't want to leave. This attitude made Li Tianlan angry. He was not familiar with Li Shi, let alone Li Qingqing. But if he left now, Lin Yuxian would definitely be full of complaints. Compared with Li Tianlan, he had no reason to stay here. Li Tianlan was thinking about what new topic to talk about when someone knocked on the door suddenly. The sound of high-heeled shoes on the ground came in from outside the door. Han Xinyan held the mobile phone and said with a dignified expression, "Your Majesty, my dad? A military counselor has important information to report to you." Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly, thinking of military counselor who had done his best for Emperor Dong's palace, but had always been aloof from him. His expression was a little strange. Han Xinyan subconsciously lowered her voice and said hurriedly, "It's very important information." Li Tianlan nodded, reached for the mobile phone, and glanced at Lin Yuxian again. Lin Yuxian stood up helplessly and planned to leave with Li Tianlan. "Child Lin, if you have nothing to do, please stay. I still have something to communicate with you. In addition, Qingqing and I have rarely left Kunlun City in recent years, so we don't know much about the outside world, especially Xianyuan City. You can talk to us." Li Shi took the initiative to speak and looked at Lin Yuxian meaningfully. As someone who had been there, she could naturally understand Lin Yuxian's occasional look at Li Qingqing. It was not a male's desire to conquer a female, but a very simple yearning and love. Li Shi really didn't know much about Lin Yuxian, but she had known Lin Fengting many years ago after all. With Lin Fengting's character, the children educated by him might not be saints, but it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a gentleman. Lin Yuxian himself was the best choice in terms of talent, appearance and future. If Li Qingqing could be with him, it could be said that it was a pretty good ending. Cough? Okay. Lin Yuxian stammered for a moment and then reacted. He gently raised the corner of his mouth. "Auntie, you can call me Xiaolin or Yuxian. It sounds kind. I'm not Child Lin. I will develop in Zhongzhou State in the future. I hope you can give me more advice." Han Xinyan took a dull look at the former heir of the Lin clan. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. A real bootlicker didn't care about the situation. In the end, he would get everything he wanted. No matter what the opportunity was, he just needed to bootlick. Shaking his head, he didn't say much. He walked out of the room and dialed the military counselor's number. The military counselor picked up the call immediately. It was obvious that he was waiting on the other side of the phone. "What's the matter?" Li Tianlan asked directly. "Your Majesty, have you seen today's news?" Li Tianlan was a little confused. "It's the morning news of Beijiang," military counselor said in a dignified tone. "The Beijiang Corps has begun to count the list of the families of the war dead last night. In the morning, the first batch of pensions has been issued in full." "So fast?" Li Tianlan was shocked. This speed could no longer be described as efficiency. With so many families of the victims, it was impossible to complete the statistics in a short period of time. Obviously, the so-called overnight statistics last night was just a pretense. The northern borderline had already begun to secretly count the families of the war dead, to determine their true identities. "How much is the first batch of pensions?" 120 billion. Military counselor said in a deep voice. "There are several more batches later." Li Tianlan frowned tightly. 120 billion. It's hard for the finance of Beijiang to come up with this money. It's not very difficult. Military counselor's tone was very certain. "We also have investments in Beijiang. Although the scale is not large, it is only relatively speaking. I can be sure that the amount of cash that Beijing's finance department can mobilize overnight is not 120 billion, not even half. This sum of money seems to have appeared out of thin air. The most important thing is that Beijing has made a statement that the second batch of pensions of about 150 billion will be issued tomorrow, and there will be another batch the day after tomorrow. They don't seem to have considered the problem of funds at all. Are you kidding me? Li Tianlong laughed. Funds come out of nowhere? Military counselor was silent for a long time before he whispered. Your Majesty, have you ever thought that in the eyes of others, our funds often come out of nowhere? Li Tianlong's eyes narrowed slightly, and he said flatly, What do you mean? I have begun to investigate the source of the accounts in Beijing, but there is not too much detailed information at present. However, according to the surface situation, the funds in Beijing have nothing to do with foreign consortiums. Although some of the money does come from overseas, this money is not from foreign consortiums, but the Jiang family's own property. Your Majesty, we also have many industries overseas. This model is too similar. Military counselor was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice. I suspect that there is also a consortium similar to the Flourishing Age Fund behind the Jiang family, which is led by the Jiang family itself. In terms of scale, they may not be as large as the Flourishing Age Fund, but it is enough for them to pay this high pension. The hidden financial resources of the Jiang family should be extremely strong. Their overall strength is not as simple as we think. Li Tianlong rubbed his forehead with one hand and said slowly, It makes sense, but there is not much basis for your speculation. There is one more thing. Saint hesitated, took a deep breath, and said softly, Before the boss left last night, he asked me to remind you that you must be careful of Jiang Shangyu. The boss seems to have received reliable news that the Jiang family seems to have a super expert in a special state. His state is probably similar to yours, but not exactly the same. His combat capability should be beyond the peak of the invincible realm. At present, some indications show that this person may be Jiang Shangyu, and even the decisive battle in Beihai is behind him. Li Tianlong was obviously stunned for a while. Jiang Shangyu? He muttered to himself and thought of Jiang Shangyu he saw yesterday. Then he shook his head and said with certainty, He is not. Even if he is not, he must have a very close relationship with Jiang Shangyu. Military counselor said, Your Majesty, in the next decisive battle in Beihai, he is very likely to be your opponent. And the boss asked me to remind you. Have you not paid attention to Li Guangtu's state for a long time? Li Tianlong fell silent. After a long while, he took a light breath and said flatly, When I go back, I will go to the headquarters of the Purgatory of Heaven capital to have a look. Chapter 953. After hanging up the call with military counselor, Li Tianlong stood where he was and kept silent for a long time. The military advisor's reminder was very timely and straightforward. Although what he said was just speculation and suspicion, the slight hesitation in his tone had an obvious sense of certainty. Military counselor almost said that there must be a super superior in the Jiang family, who was in a similar state, but not exactly the same as him. If it wasn't Jiang Shangyu, then it must have a very close relationship with Jiang Shangyu. It was he who integrated the power of the sanctuary, the Jiang family of South America, East Island, and Jew. It might be an exaggeration to say integration, but the alliance between several superpowers was indeed a bit inexplicable. It was understandable that East Island went all out. Because of the Shadow Throne, the sanctuary also had a reason to intervene, but the Jiang family of South America was really messing around. As for Ju, he had now died in Li Tianlong's hands, so there was no need to think about it. All the signs showed that there should be a key figure among these superpowers. A key figure who was extremely mysterious, but had the absolute strength to suppress the superpowers. This key figure promoted the final battle of Beihai, so he was bound to have a connection with Zhongzhou state. At least, he had a connection with Wang Qinglei and Chen Fangqing. After all, Jiang Shan was a senior counselor in Zhongzhou state. The Jiang family had enough secret channels to contact Wang Qinglei and Chen Fangqing. If the mysterious super superior really existed, he undoubtedly had the power to deter and unite several superpowers. All the signs showed that the Jiang family was behind the scenes, which united the superpowers and Zhongzhou state, and promoted the final battle of Beihai. Li Tianlan thought of Jiang Shangyu's palm in front of him again. Do you want to be my friend or my enemy? That sentence was calm and cautious, but with a kind of confidence that could make him feel an obvious sense of oppression. Did Jiang Shangyu's confidence come from the superior hiding in the dark? If things were really like military counselors' speculation, it meant that under everyone's eyes, the Jiang family had completed the integration of its own power. East Island, Knights Templars, and the Jiang family of South America might not be the subordinates of the Jiang family, but at least they were forces that could be used. It was a combination of interests that could not be broken in a short time. Jiang Shan was controlling Beijiang in a very high-profile way. Jiang Shangyu, who acted inexplicably but behaved extremely strongly, appeared in Yuzhou. The final battle of Beihai was getting closer and closer. Everything showed that the hidden superior of the Jiang family was ready to come out in a high-profile way. This also meant that the other party had the confidence to strengthen himself. Was his goal the new situation after the decisive battle in North Sea? What would he gain from the new situation? Beihai, Beijiang, Kunlun City. Li Tianlan rubbed his forehead, his thoughts a little chaotic. It was not until this moment that he realized that the super forces of the dark world had once faced it was the feeling he had in the Samsara Palace. An enemy who was always hiding in the dark but had great strength. And an enemy who was unpredictable was enough to give anyone a headache. Your Majesty, have you seen the news? Footsteps came from the corner, and Saint walked over. Yes. Li Tianlan said. I didn't see it, but I heard that Jiang Shangyu. He shook his head and didn't continue. Saint was silent for a moment, and then said with a self-mocking smile. Now I understand what Jiang Shangyu meant. He said that the Jiang family has no so-called backer. If they really have one, then their backer is only themselves. When did such a person appear in the Jiang family? Li Tianlan was a little confused. If this expert really exists, then who is the most likely one? No. Saint shook his head without hesitation. There is no such person. We've searched through the genealogy of the Jiang family. The most likely one is Jiang Shangyu, and only Jiang Shangyu. Except for him, there will not be a second person in the Jiang family who has this kind of strength to suppress Knights Templars, East Island, and the Jiang family of South America. Even if his combat capability is not as good as your Majesty's, he is at least at the peak of the invincible realm. Jiang Shangyu can't do it. Li Tianlan said blandly. I can't break through the invincible realm, and neither can he. It's not because of talent but because of his body, or in other words, he's not old enough. So we think his state should be similar to that of your Majesty, but not exactly the same. Saint said. It's also impossible for him to directly become a half-step invincible realm expert overnight. No one can break through the realm so easily, but there is a way to achieve a similar effect. Go on. Li Tianlan was expressionless. It's not breaking the realm. Saint said simply. It's recovery. If we assume that Jiang Shangyu has been in a state of serious injury, he originally had the strength beyond the peak of the invincible realm, but because of the serious injury, he could only perform at the level of the thundershocking realm. If part of his injury recovers for some reason, then his combat capability can naturally advance by leaps and bounds, and he can step into the half-step invincible realm. And in these years, if his injury recovers again, he can perform the strength of the peak of the invincible realm, or even higher. This is not impossible. And we can be sure that Jiang Shangyu has been in poor health since he was a child. If he is seriously injured, all this can be explained. How? Li Tianlan asked in reply. Do you want to say that Jiang Shangyu was born to be at the peak of the invincible realm? Saint paused, opened his mouth, and couldn't say anything for a moment. He hesitated for a long time, and then said softly, Your Majesty, now is not the time to investigate the reason. The fact is in front of us. The Jiang family can almost be sure that there is a super expert, so I'll go to Beihai with you this time. At least, I can help you share some of the pressure. No need. Li Tianlan insisted a little stubbornly. You go to East Island. I can handle Beihai. What if Li Kuangta goes with you? Saint's question was extremely sharp. Li Tianlan subconsciously narrowed his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while he continued. I can handle it. Saint looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and suddenly said, "Your Majesty, you haven't really entered the invincible realm." Li Tianlan glanced at him and didn't say anything. "I've never understood," Saint continued. "If you don't enter the invincible realm, no matter how powerful you are, there should be a limit. But Your Majesty, your combat capability has almost exceeded all limits. The only explanation is that your sword intent is perfect, and it should have really reached the supreme height. But sword intent can't replace everything. The most realistic point is that at your current age, under normal circumstances, you can only support the power of the thunder-shocking realm. At most, you can only have the combat capability of the invincible realm." Li Tianlan gave a nonchalant and made no comment. "But your actual combat capability now has steadily surpassed the peak of the invincible realm. This is not the power that your physical quality can bear, and you shouldn't be able to exert the sword energy that can match this power and the perfect sword intent." "So," Saint looked at Li Tianlan deeply, "there must be a reason." Li Tianlan didn't say anything. "I've thought about it for a long time. If I'm right, the reason why you can be truly invincible now is not because of your physical quality, right? Your real combat capability should still be the combat capability of the invincible realm. But in the real outbreak state, you can cause damage that is infinitely close to that of the chosen one in an instant or in a short time. Such an outbreak has a price. Your body didn't collapse, so the only explanation is, in that state, every time you attack, every sword, it consumes your vitality." Saint's tone was low. "Is it your own lifespan? This should be your biggest secret now, right?" Li Tianlan suddenly fell silent. "I have to go to Beihai," Saint said in a deep voice. "Even if I can't do too much, I can't watch you being besieged by the expert of the Jiang family and Li Kuangtu. Their strength is not much different from yours in the extreme state." "Who said I would be besieged?" Li Tianlan said blandly. Saint looked at Li Tianlan in astonishment. Li Tianlan smiled and his eyes flickered. "It's been more than 2 years. Do you really think that the current Beihai, or the current Wang Tianzong, has no power to fight back at all?" Chapter 954. At that moment, it was as if he had suddenly heard a huge nightmare or a disaster. Saint's body suddenly trembled. He looked straight at Li Tianlan and said in a hoarse voice, "Wang Tianzong." He was destined to be a figure that would not be forgotten in a short time. But he was also a figure that was rarely mentioned in the past 2 years. He was invincible in the world. He shocked the world and was supreme. The peak of the Wang family of Beihai and Wang Tianzong's personal glory were so short. At the moment when he was really supreme, the eternal sword above Mormons directly ended everything. That was the real day of the end. It had only been less than 2 years since the chaos in Mormons, but when it was mentioned at this time, it seemed to be really a thing of the last era. Saint's heart was in turmoil, and he couldn't calm down at all. Although he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Wang Tianzong, who appeared in Mormons that day, was enough to be a nightmare for most people in the dark world, including Lin Fengting, Li Kuangtu, and naturally Saint. He was now in the invincible realm, and was a top expert in the dark world. But compared with Wang Tianzong at that time, he was really insignificant. That was the Real Supreme, the peak of the dark world for hundreds of years, or even longer. He was brilliant and invincible. Perhaps except for Li Tianlan, no one could treat Wang Tianzong equally in that state. What was Wang Tianzong's current state? After more than 2 years of silence, did he recover some strength so quickly? It was like a shadow that once existed had once again covered the sky. Saint's heart was a little cold, and even his tone became a little cold. "It can't be so fast. It's absolutely impossible." "Why are you excited?" Li Tianlan glanced at him. Saint opened his mouth and didn't know what to say to express his emotions. After a long time, he said with a bitter smile, "Your Majesty, why do you think that the Sword Emperor has recovered? He hasn't fully recovered yet, but he's still a supreme genius after all. After such a long time, it's impossible for him to not have any tricks up his sleeves and allow himself to be trampled on." Li Tianlan shook his head and said, "The Wang family of Beihai is too confident. I can't tell what I feel. In the game between Beihai and Zhongzhou State, at the beginning, Beihai could be said to have made concessions step by step. But I don't know when it started. There is no specific time, but the whole of Beihai suddenly became tough. For example, Wang Shengxiao's speech to the whole of Beihai and the large-scale conscription of the Beihai Corps. It was precisely because this attitude was beyond Chen Fangqing's expectations that he felt that many things were out of his control. That was why his actions became more and more radical. And in the end, he pushed forward the termination plan. All of this seems to have been deliberately guided. If I'm not mistaken, Wang Tianzong's state has changed before and after that speech. I don't know what the specific changes are, but at that realm, his recovery ability may not be much worse than his combat capability. You reminded me to pay attention to Li Guangtu's condition. Li Guangtu might get better. Why can't Wang Tianzong do the same? It's not the same thing. Saint smiled bitterly and said, Li Guangtu's injury is far less serious than Wang Tianzong's. We all know the power of that sword. Wang Tianzong is lucky not to die. In our estimation, the most optimistic result is that Wang Tianzong can't recover within 10 years. It's only been 2 years, so it should be impossible. Li Tianlan shook his head slightly and said nothing. What he said just now was all speculation, but what really made him sure that Wang Tianzong's state was gradually recovering was actually the information about Carefree that Lin Yuxian told him. Carefree might be able to suppress Ruthless in a certain state, but when no one in the whole of Beihai could be sure of his current state, why did Wang Shengxiao dare to attack Ruthless? Because of Carefree? But in this case, it looked like a big gamble. The Wang family of Beihai was indeed crazy, but at this stage, they couldn't afford to gamble at all. So the only answer was that the Wang family of Beihai didn't care about his state. Even if his current state could suppress and devour Ruthless Carefree, the Wang family of Beihai wouldn't care. The only reason that could make Wang Shengxiao so confident, apart from the so-called compensation, was Wang Tianzong. I have a hunch. Li Tianlan chuckled. The final battle in Beihai this time will definitely give everyone a huge surprise. If that's the case, Saint hesitated for a moment. If that's the case, it's most appropriate for me to go by myself. Li Tianlan said blandly. At the very least, even if it's impossible, I can at least guarantee that I can escape unscathed. Even if Wang Tianzong has recovered a little, as long as he's not at his peak, there's nothing to worry about. The mysterious expert of the Jiang family, Li Guangtu, several invincible realm experts. It sounds scary, but at the very least, even if I can't beat them, no one can stop me if I want to leave. If you guys go, maybe it'll be a different situation. Let's go back to Tiannan today. I'll call Du Hanin and Su Chu who are in Beihai to come back. Emperor Dong's palace will concentrate all its forces to East Island, and I'll go to Beihai by myself. This is the safest way. The corner of Saint's mouth twitched, and he said with a helpless and bitter smile, Safe, okay, safe. He hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, But your current state? Your guess is right. If I want to maintain the extreme state now, what I squander is indeed vitality. My physical strength is currently unable to bear the absolute power and sword energy, so I can only overdraw. From this point of view, before I make a sword move in the extreme state, I first hurt my body, so I need a lot of vitality to make up for the injury. It's not wrong to say that I overdraw my life. Li Tianlan's voice was very calm. But in fact, the impact on me is not as serious as you think. The huge vitality of the dragon vein of Zhongzhou state may not be able to completely support my unscrupulous waste. But don't forget, compared with the martial arts direction of the Wang family of Beihai's extreme outbreak, what's the best thing about the Li family's martial arts? The Li family's strongest thing was the sword. The Wang family of Beihai's strongest thing was also the sword. The strongest thing of the two was the sword, but the direction was not the same. The martial arts direction of Beihai was extreme outbreak. And the Li family, it's extreme balance. Li Tianlan said calmly, So at present, I can maintain this state. There will be an impact, but it won't be very big. Maybe I sleep longer, eat more, and need more rest and adequate nutrition. As for the follow-up impact, it will probably be reflected in a few decades. But after a few decades, my physical strength will be enough to support me to enter a higher realm, so all these problems are not very big. But, Saint hesitated for a moment and used honorifics again. You don't have the body of the invincible realm yet. No matter how balanced you are, it should be difficult to control the power beyond the peak of the invincible realm. You're wrong. Li Tianlan's tone was normal. At least so far, the power I have exerted has not surpassed the peak of the invincible realm. Chapter 955. There was a dim light in the underground base, which was so simple that it could even be said to have been picked up by others. On the surface, it was a barren mountain forest at the border of southern cloud and southern sky. The underground base was built in a hurry. In order to hide it, it was dug very deep, so the ventilation was not very good. The air was stuffy, with a hint of a faintly discernible stench. There were no extra staff. One of them used to be a gatekeeper of the base after retiring from scientific research, and the other was an apprentice of the gatekeeper. In addition to the master and apprentice, there was only a set of outdated life support equipment left in the base. What is this? Jiang Shangyu looked at the extremely old equipment in front of him with a look of disgust. His Majesty's eyes were also full of disgust, which was exactly the same as Jiang Shangyu's. But his expression was a little helpless. I'll make do with it. I hate the feeling of becoming a fool, Jiang Shangyu complained and said with a little pain in the ass. I feel sick when I think about it. His Majesty did not speak. He thought that even if he became a fool, it would happen after he came out of this set of equipment. What are you thinking about? Jiang Shangyu looked at him and raised his eyebrows. Don't you know what I'm thinking? His Majesty asked in reply and turned on the life support equipment in front of him. The equipment was a little outdated. It looked old and even a little dirty, but the inside was very clean. His Majesty pressed the button, and the sound of the equipment running rang out. The small cabin in front of them began to be filled with a black liquid. The liquid was increasing, and it looked like a piece of almost solidified darkness. His Majesty suddenly retched, turned to look at Jiang Shangyu, and said helplessly, What are you doing? Cut the crap. Jiang Shangyu resisted the desire to vomit, and his face was stiff. It's really nonsense, His Majesty murmured to himself. The distance between them was too close. When they stood together, not only did they know what each other was thinking, but they even felt the same. But if you don't talk, doesn't it look strange? Jiang Shangyu snorted, and his face became more and more ugly. Your willpower is too poor. This degree of sleep will make people uncomfortable, but it's nothing. And this time it won't be long. Cut the crap. Jiang Shangyu glared at His Majesty and said angrily, You do it if you can. His Majesty nodded seriously and repeated, If you can do it, then go ahead. Jiang Shangyu paused. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, Now I want to kill you. If you can do it, then go ahead. Of course, His Majesty could sleep at this level. But then he had to fight Li Tianlan alone. Jiang Shangyu really couldn't do this kind of thing. There has been some progress in the laboratory. We will strive to develop the second generation of nutrient solution, so that it won't be as disgusting as it is now, His Majesty said slowly. As for this base, it's really a little shabby, but we don't have much power here, so we can only make do. 3 days later, after the battle between me and Li Tianlan is over, you will be transferred to East Island as soon as possible. His Majesty was silent for a moment and said softly, If there are no accidents after the battle at the North Sea, it won't matter much whether or not we have new nutrient fluids. Jiang Shangyu looked at the thicker and thicker black liquid in the cockpit, and took a deep breath subconsciously. The development of the Jiang family in this respect was completely different from that of the Wang family of Beihai. They couldn't be compared at all. Whether it was the foundation or the technology, they weren't at the same level. So naturally, the things they developed couldn't be perfect. This black nutrient solution could be said to be one of the most important things of the Jiang family now, codenamed Eternal Seal. This liquid, which was almost in a solid state, was the product of the Jiang family's targeted research for many years. It was also a drug specially developed for Jiang Shangyu and His Majesty. When Jiang Shangyu was dormant in the cabin, under the penetration of the Eternal Seal, the sensitivity of his body would be greatly reduced, forming a state similar to that of a vegetative person. The perfect combination of various drugs greatly strengthened his body when it was extremely slow. He and His Majesty were the same person. This kind of phenomenon that science couldn't explain would naturally have some facts that science couldn't explain. For example, the two people's thoughts could be synchronized within a certain distance. Another example was that within a certain distance, His Majesty could transfer a lot of the damage he suffered to Jiang Shangyu, who was temporarily sealed. In the same way, when Jiang Shangyu was asleep, his physical strength was greatly improved. His Majesty could also overdraft his body to suppress the toxins in his body, so as to exert the power close to the peak state. He and Jiang Shangyu were the same person. But from this point of view, it was equivalent to two individuals. His Majesty didn't know the result of the battle between him and Li Tianlan. But as long as Jiang Shangyu was asleep, he was invincible. After all, Jiang Shangyu had no poison in his body. Without poison, in the nutrient solution codenamed Eternal Seal, his physical strength was completely comparable to that of the peak of the invincible realm. In addition, with His Majesty's own physical strength, the two could bear his strength and the damage at the same time. It could almost easily break through the boundary of the peak of the invincible realm. This thing is so beautiful. His Majesty looked at the black liquid in the cockpit with some disgust, and his tone was a little emotional. After countless experiments and countless improvements, this was already the best result he could get. The only drawback was that Jiang Shangyu's body and mind would also be in an extremely slow state for a short period of time after he ended his sleep. His external performance was like an idiot. But in the state of sleep, the Eternal Seal could directly improve a person's physical endurance from the half-step invincible realm to the peak of the invincible realm. It was definitely a well-deserved masterpiece. This kind of masterpiece couldn't play any role in the hands of others, but in the hands of Jiang Shangyu and His Majesty, it was a real divine weapon. It was no exaggeration to say that before the poison of vermilion bird blood and black tortoise blood was solved, how powerful His Majesty could exert completely depended on the physical strength of Jiang Shangyu in the state of sleep. The laboratory of the Jiang family had never given up the study of the Eternal Seal. At present, there had been some results. The expected result of the second generation of the Eternal Seal was that the physical strength of Jiang Shangyu in the state of sleep could break through the peak of the invincible realm. If this idea could succeed, His Majesty would exert the real combat capability at the peak state. I didn't imagine it, Jiang Shangyu said directly. This sentence was a bit brainless. But at this moment, he completely felt the problem in His Majesty's heart. Just like many years ago, no one could imagine what the dark world would be without the Li family. Now the two of them had never imagined what the dark world would be without Dongcheng Huangti/Li Tianlan. That kind of dark world. His Majesty was silent for a long time before he whispered. That may not be what we want, but we can all be sure that we can get what we want in that kind of dark world. Jiang Shangyu nodded and said, "That's enough." There was a dull roar in the cockpit. All the equipment was started. Jiang Shangyu turned to look at His Majesty and reached out his palm. "Goodbye." "Goodbye." His Majesty held his hand and said, "Go to sleep. When you wake up and meet again, we will be His Majesty in the dark world." Chapter 956. More than 2 years ago, or in the past many years, when Sword Emperor Wang Tianzong of Zhongzhou State was healthy, every time he came to Yuzhou, as long as the itinerary was clear, a director would come to pick him up. There was no accident. Every time Wang Tianzong was picked up, it was the director of the Southeast Group. Only once, the president came in person, but it was still the director of the Southeast Group who came with the president. A long time ago, when Li Beitian gossiped with him about this, he sighed with emotion and said that this was the F***King card. Li Tianlan didn't quite understand it at that time. He just felt that it was meaningless to do so. It seemed to be useless except for showing off. It had been a few years since that conversation. Now Li Tianlan, who also had the same treatment, also understood the meaning of doing so. This was the second time he left Yuzhou since he was called His Majesty. The last time he returned to Xianyuan City, it was Zhou Mulan, the director of the giant group, who sent him off. This time, it was Dongqing Wudi who sent him back to Xianyuan City. This was also a small detail that Zhongzhou State and Emperor Dong's palace jointly maintain the stability of Zhongzhou State. Although such a farewell was of high standard, it would not be reported by the news, but people who should know would know. This meant that Emperor Dong's palace and the group controlled by it were still under the control of Zhongzhou state. The relationship between the two sides was still stable, and Emperor Dong's palace was also under the leadership of the parliament. It was a very simple signal, but an essential one. Gradually, Li Tianlan began to enjoy the treatment that Wang Tianzong had. In the conference room of the Hidden Dragon Sea, he could sit opposite Li Huaqing. When entering and leaving Yuzhou, the director would personally pick him up. Similarly, in the past many years, every time Wang Tianzong was in Yuzhou, countless modern super firepower of Zhongzhou state would secretly aim at Beihai. Now, when Li Tianlan was in Yuzhou, countless weapons were also aimed at Xianyuan city. The subtlety of this was the real relationship between super forces like Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai and Zhongzhou state. It's good to leave today. The comrade from the Meteorological Bureau said that there will be a heavy snowstorm tonight, and it is estimated that all flights will be delayed tomorrow. Yuzhou has been very busy recently, and your identity is very sensitive now. It is not good for you to stay in Yuzhou for a long time. In the cold wind in the afternoon, the sky above Yuzhou Airport was slightly gloomy. The plane was doing the last check before takeoff. Dongqing Wudi stood in the cold wind and said in a calm tone, patting Li Tianlan's shoulder, "It's not good for the parliament, is it?" Li Tianlan laughed. Wang Tianzong seldom came to Yuzhou before. If there were no accidents, Li Tianlan would have fewer chances to come here in the future. It was not because it was a forbidden place, but because different identities represented different meanings. He was now Emperor Donghuang, and the new group had already taken shape. The giant group was fully supporting Li Tianlan to let him stand at the real peak, which also meant that there were few things he could not solve. It would be fine if he came to Yuzhou in private, but if he came with great fanfare, some people would inevitably think that he had something to communicate and negotiate with the parliament in private. No matter what it was, not many people would know. In this way, the longer he stayed in Yuzhou, the more uneasy the outside world would be. They would think that there were some unsolvable conflicts between Emperor Dong's palace and the parliament that needed Li Tianlan to waste time here. Even if he came here for nothing, just like this time he didn't meet with Li Huaqing at all. But the outside world didn't know about it. It was impossible for the parliament to issue a statement saying that he came here for nothing and told everyone not to think too much. That would be too weak. It's the same for you, Dongqing Wudi said in a low voice, and his serious expression softened a little. Your identity is different now. You represent more than yourself. You must think more about what happens in the future. Heavenly Son, His Majesty Leader. How nice it sounds. But how could it be so easy to do? Take Wang Tianzong for example. He seemed to be well off these years, but only he knew the pressure he was under. He was probably out of breath. But he was angry, wasn't he? In fact, if they had restrained themselves over the years and restrained themselves in some things, how could there be such a situation today? The nature of Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai are the same. Studying them can save you a lot of detours. In your current position, you can do anything you want, but there is not much you can really do. Slowly, you will understand that when a person can really be unscrupulous, that is when he really has nothing. Emperor Dong's palace and the two groups have power over the court and are as rich as a country. But behind them are the fate of countless people. I hope you can feel their real weight. To bear these, you need more than force. You also need prudence. Li Tianlan slowly put out the cigarette in his hand and gently flicked his fingers. Subtle sword energy flew out of his fingers and instantly broke the cigarette into powder invisible to the naked eye. His smile faded and he nodded slightly. I'm a little long-winded. Dongqing Wudi laughed at himself and said, in short, you can rest assured about the affairs in Yuzhou. Although we are old guys, none of us is willing to admit our age. We can handle things here for you. Tianlan, my only hope is that when you stand at the top and look at the world, you must not forget the cliff under your feet because of the beautiful mountains and rivers in front of you. I did some ridiculous things in my early years. Today, it seems that the result is good. Over the years, I have regretted it many times. But if I ask myself, if I can do it again, even if I know I will regret it, I will do it. But I will regret it eventually. Dongqing Wudi's eyes were a little complicated. He looked at the young man in front of him quietly. Dong Huang of the Dark World. The young majesty of Zhongzhou State. The current leader of the Li family. The young giant who stood at the top of the world in his early 20s. His own son. Dongqing Wudi patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder heavily. It seemed that he wanted to hide the sudden panic and uneasiness in his heart. He turned his head slightly and said hoarsely, "No matter what happens in the future, it's good to be safe and alive." Li Tianlan took a deep look at him. "It's a little strange." After thinking for a while, he said softly. Dongqing Wudi's body stiffened. "In my memory, no one seems to have said this to me. Since I was a child, Grandpa has always asked me to rush to the highest place." Li Tianlan said softly, "When I got to this position, Grandpa was gone. If he was still there, maybe he should have advised me to be cautious. I like this feeling very much. I will also remember these words. In fact, there is no need to regret anything really. Since I was a child, I have thought that I have nothing to lose, so even today, I have never thought about what I have lost. What I see is what I have gained. The Li family is mine, and Emperor Dong's palace is mine. It's a little late, more than 20 years late, but now I have a father and a mother." Li Tianlan's smile was clear without any resentment or dissatisfaction. "Now that I have parents, I don't want to lose you." The plane was ready to take off. Li Tianlan took a step forward and hugged Dongqing Wudi, who was a little stiff. "Take care of yourself," he whispered. "If I have time, I will go to Zhongyuan to see you. Let's go." He waved his hand and strode onto the plane. After a short wait, the plane slowly entered the runway. It started, sprinted, rushed into the sky, and went further and further away. Dongqing Wudi had been standing there and watching, just watching all the time. When he finished the 6th cup of coffee, he, who had been sitting quietly in the cafe all afternoon, ate the last piece of cake. He narrowed his eyes and saw the helicopter roaring overhead. It went over and approached the nearby majestic castle like a mountain. He watched silently, watching the helicopter descend and disappear from his sight, and finally smiled softly. "Waiter," he called out calmly. "Sir, what can I do for you?" A young, dark-skinned waiter in uniform walked over and said respectfully, "I need a pen and a blank sheet of paper," he said softly. The waiter was stunned, handed him the ballpoint pen with both hands, said "Wait a minute," and turned to take a blank notebook from the backstage. He said "Thank you," tore a blank sheet of paper from the notebook, and handed it to the waiter with a tip of 100 Zhongzhou dollars. He said with a smile, "One sheet is enough. I'm very satisfied with your service." Without waiting for the waiter to respond, he had picked up the pen, lowered his head, and seemed to be thinking about what to write. The waiter left without a sound. The ballpoint pen in his hand began to slide on the white paper, and quickly turned into 2 simple lines of small characters. He put down the ballpoint pen, looked at the content on the paper, and shook his head slightly. "I wanted to write something pretentious. My literary talent is too poor." He, who seemed to be shrouded in a starry cloud, sighed, stood up, and turned to look at the huge castle standing under the sky not far away. The sun was about to set in Xianyuan City. He shook his head regretfully after making sure that he really couldn't write a mighty and domineering letter of challenge. The setting sun fell. The lights were on. At the moment when day and night alternated, he flicked his fingers casually. With a faint sound, the piece of paper in his hand that had been torn somewhat neatly disappeared in an instant. Boom! In an instant, a small half of Xianyuan City heard an extremely violent thunder. On the lawn in front of the castle, Li Tianlan, who had taken the plane from Yuzhou to Nanyuan, and then back to Xianyuan City, suddenly looked back the moment he got off the plane. In his sight, the sky seemed to darken in an instant. The lights of Xianyuan City shone and refracted in the darkness. Outside Emperor Dong's palace, a solidified domain that Li Tianlan had never seen before took shape in the blink of an eye. The violent domain swallowed all the light, and turned into an exaggerated whirlpool of thousands of meters in the distant sky. The whirlpool was expanding rapidly, covering the entire Emperor Dong's palace in an instant. At this moment, everyone in Emperor Dong's palace subconsciously raised their heads and looked at the sky. As far as the eye could see, the sky had been completely distorted by the majestic domain. The space was shaking wildly. Under the absolute pressure, a white light rushed from the whirlpool to Li Tianlan unhurriedly. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. At first glance, he saw that it was a piece of white paper. The most ordinary piece of white paper. The white paper flew all the way from thousands of meters away and accelerated wildly in the domain that distorted the sky. Like a meteor, it directly crashed into Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan, who was expressionless, stretched out his hand. The meteor directly crashed into Li Tianlan's hand. It was completely silent. The domain that covered thousands of meters in the sky suddenly disappeared. Li Tianlan's arm shook. Saint and Lin Yuxian, who were beside him, were directly retreated by a huge force at the same time, and their bodies were unstable. Li Tianlan was motionless, looking down at the white paper in his hand quietly. The white paper that flew thousands of meters did not deform at all. It was neat and tidy. The handwriting on the white paper was extremely clear and straightforward. You didn't choose to be our friend. Then we are enemies. 3 days later, in Emperor Dong's palace, we will fight to the death. Li Tianlan gently rubbed the paper with his fingers, narrowed his eyes, and did not speak for a long time. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.